Alright, we are set.
All right. All right, for those of you who are here, what's up? I just been looking at a lot of the talk of what's been going on in the Discord, and I think, you know what, we need to have a talk, or at least have a live talk about what's going on. What I'm seeing, what people are seeing, what just the whole kit caboodle, what's going on with the meta. I think that right now we're in a flux, or we were in a flux before, and now I think it's very animate, very clear what the meta is like, what people are trying to do, and what it means to win in cEDH right now. Um, and again, as always, for those that want to input their side, or if I'm saying things that are just outright, hey man, that doesn't make any sense, or that's just wrong, like that's just outright wrong. Like, please be sure to like just say something or politely just be like, it's not really what I'm seeing or what I'm feeling. Or if you have questions, this is a time as well to just get all those questions out and make sure that we're all on the same page, which is really the big reason why we do these things to begin with. So let's start with tournament that ended today, right? Misplay on the Lake was in Ohio. For those of you who do not follow big tournaments and do not follow the news on cEDH and what's going on, I watched the top 16 and the top 4 game when I was working on my EDS stuff. And Andy Beach just obliterated. In my opinion, absolutely cooked the top pod um, with his politicking. And then in the top 16 match was it was tough, but like I see what he did, what he like how he did what he did, and why he did what he did. Um, Using his Angel's Grace to an advantage, and kind of in a way using Freedom Waffles' uh, reputation of talking a lot in games, which isn't terrible. I understand why he does it. I understand that it's a tactic, and I understand it is his God-given right to talk and make opinions and say stuff. But in the end, in my opinion, it's what cost him the game. Because if he didn't yap so much to begin with, in the early parts of the game, he would have had more time at the end. So, um, here's the big thing I'm seeing though. We can look at EDH top 16 over the last 3 months and over the last, and we could say 100 plus players. I don't think 250 plus players is really a like accurate description of what's going on because there's so few of those, if I'm not mistaken. But like 50 plus players, I think is more of this is where most medium to weekly, like monthly things are happening, right? So like in local metas, where like, oh yeah, we have these monthly events that happen at this one shop, and like a bunch of players from around the area get together. That ranges from anywhere, in my opinion, from like 40 to 60 something players, right? That's where the 50 plus players comes in. So I would rather look at that than the 100 plus. I also want to be clear, like, yeah, 100 plus is, at least slightly different, right? We have Magda versus Ral, and Ral is just right outside the top 10. Right, it's still in top 10. Magda is 11th. So we're not really talking about that much difference when it comes to 100 to 50. And then if we go to very large tournaments, like the biggest ones, still pretty much the same basic meta that we're looking at, right? And Null is a little higher than I expected it to be, but uh, it's this I think is going to be much more accurate to what we're going to be seeing, especially this right here. I think after this weekend, this is going to shoot up. I think Jeskai control period is going to be the the deck to play. Whether that's Rogishai, whether that's I've been playing Karkishai lately, and I can tell you from my experience, like it's absolutely busted to be able to do what Jeskai does. Um, but the question is why? Why are these Jeskai decks just absolutely storming? And if I'm not mistaken, this is won three big tournaments in a row, right? So Jace has a 120 player win, Zaxxas has a 120 player win, and now Andy Beach has another one. We have look at this. This is all within the last 3 months. Like if I break this down, yeah, this is all within the last 3 months. We have first in 55, second in 80, third in 72, fifth and one. So look at all these conversions that are with like so close to what we're doing right now, right? And again, he just won a big one here, so add another one to the pile, right? So the question is, why is this deck crushing people, right? It's not the deck Rog Ishai, in my opinion, that's crushing people. What it is the color combo and the strategy behind what it really is supposed to do. So Rog Ishai combines two things. One, it combines the early interaction and the need for like those early pieces of I just need to stop the turbo guy once and be done. Two, it abuses Ristic study. We all know this. We all have been seeing this. We've all been experiencing this in our locals or wherever. That Ristic plus Ristic on one board probably means they're going to win the game, right? And three, it it takes away the ability for us to do. Oh, how do I say this? It was instant speed. That's what matters. So I said this months ago. I said this. I've been saying it now for a while. The two things right now that you want to be able to do in cEDH to be successful are one, win at instant speed, and two, win without putting spells on the stack. But if you're gonna put spells on the stack, you need to win that action economy by either having more resources than everybody else or be able to refuel your resources better than anybody else. Which is why Jeskai having Ristic Study, Mystic Remora, things like that, and Smothering Tithe in particular, or Stormkill Artist in particular, do those two things passively, right? So the reason why blue and why blue has always been very good in my opinion, number one, it's the best interaction on the stack, right? It dominates the stack as far as what you can do on the stack. And I know that white gives us the ability to, well, we have silences. Okay, well, so does Jeskai. So Jeskai not only has the silences that we have, number one. Number two, they have more counteracting things on the stack that they can bury our spells and bury our abilities on the stack. And three, they have more flash enablers, right? Like that's like the big three. So to win at a high level consistently and comfortably, I'm going to say comfortably because I do think that we can win. As a Mardu deck, I do think we can win. I think there's plenty of people that play in this meta. I think there's plenty of people that play right now with Dargo that are showing us that you still can win. I mean, if we're looking at the conversion rate, right? Dargo is a top 10 played deck. Not like top 10 like just like overall performance, but is a top 10 played deck. And frankly, right, there's a 19% conversion rate, or nearly pretty much a 20% conversion rate. So 1 in 5 players is converting. That's a pretty damn good conversion rate, in my opinion, right? So it may not, yeah, if I'm not mistaken, conversion rate. So Crom Tymna is still the top. Kinnan is we're higher than Kinnan, technically. We're higher than Kinnan, right? This is let's be real here. This is absolutely spiked by Evan playing all the time. Like we can just scroll down here and hit Kinnan with a bunch of times with Evan. Um Rogthras, we're slightly behind them in conversion rate. Rog Sai, we are again, this is only for
The 1 year
like
period, yeah.
the 1 year period. I can actually switch this to 3 month period. We're slightly behind Rogsai. We are.
Did you look at us with the 3 month? I thought we were still on the 1 year when we were on ours.
Oh, you're probably right. Yeah, so we're right at 20. We're right at 20%, which is fine. Like that's still a pretty darn good. So right behind Rogthras, so negligible. Rogsai, negligible. Sisei, I'm actually a little surprised Sisei's still up here. Slightly behind Sisei. We're right in the mix of things, right? We're right in the thick of yeah. We're 2% off the top deck. We're doing fine. I won't say fine. We're doing pretty darn well. So my idea for this town hall was to kind of get ideas and brainstorm what you guys have been thinking, what I've been thinking about this meta, right? And right now, how we don't do any of the things that I just said we need to do to comfortably win in cEDH right now. We don't win at instant speed. We don't passively get resources from anything. We have to put spells on the stack to win. We lose to silence. Like we don't activate abilities to win, which again was the things I would say are the uh biggest indicators from winning decks, right? All the decks that we see up here, other than Atali, I mean Atali, there's no way this has a higher, yeah, 14% conversion rate. Like it's not doing well, right? So wins at instant speed, 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 instant speed. Like all of these instant speed, every single deck up here, sans us and Atali, can win at instant speed because of blue and because of the way they are, because of the way the deck is constructed, right? Time can win at instant speed, Luma can win at instant speed, Terra can win at instant speed. I believe it's not very good at it, but if I'm not mistaken, they're also getting thrashed. So like, you know, do be that way, I guess. Tivit is control shell, right? But it can win at instant speed, I believe, if I'm not mistaken. So, uh, everything we see here has instant speed lines, right? At least in the top up here echelon of our meta. So the reason I think Dargo is still doing well and why Atali can sneak in on things is because if you're not doing the big two, meaning or the big three, passive, winning at instant speed, and not putting spells on the stack, you have to be doing you have to be at least doing two of those things, or you're hyper specialized, which is where I think we come in. We're hyper specialized in the sense of we push resiliently really, really freaking well. I also feel like for any non-blue Ristic Study copy cloning deck, we are the closest thing to blue farm that's out there. And what I mean by that is we have a fallback plan on Tymna when our turbo plan doesn't work or cannot be done because there's no windows. And we have multiple lines that involve either breach or some sort of storming effect to win, which inherently Blue Farm is. So like I don't really care what people think as far as I'm Blue Farm. No, 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 I'm Control Blue Farm. Blue Farm is a turbo deck at its core. It is a turbo deck. It is turbo. It is Mardu with a little bit of blue. And so anyone that tells me otherwise, I'm just like, I just don't believe you. I play with Corbin all the time. I play with a lot of good blue farm players. It's the same shit, right? They're all going to be able to win on turn two if they get the right hand, and they can all grind as good as anyone else if they get the if they have to, right? But what we do is we have that turbo plan, which we all kind of agree is like the ad nos, the massive payoff effects. We have a big battery for mana in Dargo, and if that doesn't work, we can do the Tymna plan. Or there are some of us that actually just do the Tymna plan as our primary plan, and we farm people until we're ready to go. My biggest concerns right now are the two ideologies of thinking are one, either we have to get underneath everybody, and two, we swing too heavily in the opposite direction and we go super mid range. We're like, I do think we have cards that can do stuff, but we're just gonna get drowned in value when it comes to uh like trying to outpace and farm, which is kind of like where we're at right now, in my opinion. We're at that crossroads of like, where does this deck go? We're not the crossroads of the meta. We're at the crossroads of where we are now. Because the whole basis of Rageshai and why it's cooking us is, oh, they want to do the turbo plan. I'll just stop you very quickly. We're built to stop people quick and just get and like protect until we can accumulate our resources with risk study. That's the whole point of the deck. Kind of like Tyam. Tyam, to my opinion, is another meta buster where it's like, if I could just stop people long enough to accumulate the resources, it's a snowball effect. If I just stop the Ristic study on the Rageshai, right, then they never snowball and we don't lose the game. Like they never can get going. But if we don't do that, then they will eventually win the game. The longer the game goes, the more likely they are to win the game, which is again very much like Tymna. So, what are you guys seeing in your local metas, and what are you guys seeing in just in general? What you're at your tournaments? Where like I feel like playing against these decks, or I haven't seen a lot of these decks, or I'm not seeing this meta. I'm seeing a turbo meta still. What are we seeing, guys?
Um, I mean, I'm not playing in tournaments much, but I am, just like in normal play. I play Roxai and Dargo. In my experience with both of them, games have to be dragged out longer because of these decks,
Mhm.
and Dargo just consistently is able to win with that more. And I think it's because Dargo doesn't have to push early. Roxai, you have to push early. It's not
Mhm.
an option, and I think part of that is even true in Blue Farm. That even in Blue Farm, it while they can fall back on Tymna and Ristic Study and just draw into the Breach or draw into Thoracle, they can't just they don't try to do that first. They try to land a turn 2 Necropotence, turn 3 win.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
they just try to do it at instant speed more than we can do that.
Yeah, they just have better necros than we do. That's that's kind
Oh
of the
yeah,
that's the vibe I get from Blue Form right now. Is that like, hey, can I land my necro early and a splash effect? Yeah, okay, then I'm just gonna rip. Like, let's just rip
well
rip
yeah,
necro as quick as possible.
and I think to put it in a really weird way, Blue Farm has better Necro and Roxai has better ad Naws. Because when I hit Naws, I bolt my life total down and get nothing from it.
Yeah,
And I think that can, in one hand, represent the two different sides of where the meta is. We can either try to get a better Naws by trying to go turbo, or we can try to get better Necros, better long games by trying to play more mid range.
interesting. So you think that mid range is a better necro plan?
I think it can be. Obviously, I think the best mid range plan is going to be Bulls of Citadel. Uh, because if you just hit Goblin Welder turn 1, turn 2, and you just let it sit there until you can manage to get Bulls of Citadel into the graveyard, and then nobody can do anything.
Hmm. See, that's actually gonna bring up another talk I'd like to branch into. Maybe not quite yet, but definitely a talk about Citadel and things like Citadel and things like that. And the reasons why I'm testing other things that do not involve that, and other cards that what they represent in our deck. Um, I spent a lot of time thinking about Rakdos over the last 24 hours. Between talks with Joey and Human Growth or HGH, like in the Discord, and then like just by myself and talking with like other people in the Discord that I might be messaging personally, like where things are in the deck and where things are as far as what we need from this deck. The one of the bigger things that I'm concerned about is we're not going to be able to win games without landing a silence creature or a silence effect of that nature to push. We're not going to be able to outlast, like we can't put enough interaction, enough protection, enough anything in this deck to get past someone who's going to draw 2 cards every single time we play a spell. Not to mention that the politics of us trying to win a game is always going to, every time you try to win a game in cEDH, it becomes a 3v1 game. We just happen to be, we used to be in a meta where it's like, well, I'm a Tolly bro, I don't interact. Like, I can't do anything about that. Like, I'm not meant to do anything. Or Roxai has a few things, but it's like, we're not meant to interact with you. Like, we just try to push and we got blown out. Like, oh well, kind of thing. Whereas now, I used to call this okay. My buddy Brandon who plays Shorekai. He's been playing Shorekai. Phil, you can correct me on this. He's been playing Shorekai for over a year now. Let's say like a year and a half. And
At least, yeah.
yeah, I used to call that deck Turbo Control. And what I meant by that was, and really what Rog Ishai is now is race to get my advantage engine out and a piece of interaction out as soon as possible, and then sit on it and make sure no one can win before I can, or win over the top of them, whatever it might be. But the whole concept is the idea of setting up my ability to protect a board is a turbo mentality of like get to that immediately, and then we can go from there. Whereas our plans used to be try to win as fast as humanly possible, and then grind if we have to. We're at a point now where if we go past turn 3, turn 4, there's gonna be so many passive advantage engines out. We can't stop all of it. We can't. Unless you're running multiple like Nova clerics and stuff like that. Like we're just not gonna be able to do the thing. So the question is, how do we combat that, right? How do we get around this problem? And again, the two thoughts that I've been seeing being discussed the most is, well, then just go faster, get underneath that, which I think wholeheartedly in a good response. Well, not a good. That's not the word I want to use. In a responsible meta, that's not going to happen. And again, Phil is a local of mine that he can tell you that like a lot of times when him and I play Dargo and we push turn 2, or we try and set things up turn 2 to win turn 3 and like leave a grand abolisher on the field or something like that, there's always interaction for us. There's always this like, hey man, I went seat 1 turn 2 ad nauseam with mana left over. Yeah, there was 3 counter spells for that. Like, oh, okay. Like, guess I'm done playing that game. Or we left Grand Abolisher out to then push on turn 3, but we needed that silence effect out, but we left the Grand Abolisher out there, so it's gonna get bounced. Like it immediately gets bounced on our upkeep. So we have no say in the matter on that either. And now we have to wait another turn. So responsible metas are not going to let you just sit there on a Grand Abolisher. They're not going to sit there and let you just push on them on turn 2. So, in my opinion, that's not the answer. It could be for your meta. I don't know. I'm not in your meta. So, I'm not going to sit here and say it's an inherently wrong way to approach things. What I do want to say, though, is like, if that is your mentality, what are you seeing in your meta that is leaning you towards that mentality? Is there anyone that is seeing that in their meta where you're like, oh, yeah, dude, turn 2 pushes are actually pretty safe?
Uh, so I just got back from Misplay on the Lake, and
Okay.
I ran into more people pushing before even I could push. There, mostly kittens, believe it or not. But I I didn't run into too many games in Ohio where it got into like Ristic slop, except for like maybe one out of the 8 I played. Um, but things were going so fast and I couldn't even keep up with them. Like a turn 3 play was too slow. And a
Interesting.
turn 4 non-protected, if you can't get protection out, there's no way, you're pretty much blown out. So that was the Ohio meta this weekend at least.
That's interesting because 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. 9 of the top 16 decks that I am aware of were all Ristic Slop decks. So what are you seeing in that game in their tournament that we're not seeing? Because you were there, I was not. So was there just like every pod was seat order simulator? Was it because like you just weren't seeing the rest? They just wasn't like you weren't seeing it, or like what's going on?
So I ran into most of my games, believe it or not, were Kinnan and Blue Farm. And you would assume that they would get to Ristic Slop, yes. But the problem was that games were ending before anybody really could get up Ristics or something. Never saw Rog Ishai. Saw a ton of Rog Thras, a ton of like off meta decks as well. But most of the games, like I didn't even go to time. And if I did go to time, it was the one game where literally everybody had a Ristic and we couldn't do anything about it. But that was like one game that I pushed the time with a wrist stick. I did realize that you need to have silence effects down because there's so much interaction that just shuts us off. That I wasn't pushing for wins unless I had a silence, like my rail or Grand Demolisher.
I feel like that's a contradicting take. Then, well, I mean, not a contradicting take of like, what am I trying to say?
Can I
Here?
ask what your record was?
My record
This will make
was
sense. This will make sense in a second.
my record in the main event was 0-1 and 1-3-1. I
Cool.
won my
So
third game.
so that sounds like the gulag. So there, basically, most people who join a cEDH tournament, like just from a numbers perspective, they're all trying to go as they're all trying to jam. They're all trying to go as fast as possible. They're all trying to enact their game plans. They're all trying to win the game. The thing.
And we lost you.
We lost you, JB.
What are they trying?
Can you hear me now?
Yeah,
Hello?
yeah,
Hello?
yeah.
Okay. So,
Yeah.
where I was getting was all these turbo control decks, they're all gulag busters because if everybody's trying to go fast, then the table is afraid of the person that's trying to push first. And so if the turbo control person can just be like, "Hey, let me stop you real quick. I'm the good guy." The table will rally around them and will not assess them as a threat, which gives them the tempo to develop their engines and win the game. So
I completely agree with that.
yeah.
Personally, the format I use to try to win my games is land like a turn 1 Esper Sentinel and then wait for a turbo deck to push. Wait for the first person to push, and once interaction is used on that, that's when if I don't have a silence in hand or a silence effect in hand, and I don't have one out already, that's when I push for an unprotected win. Because interaction has been shown and used, and if they had it all along, and I wasn't gonna win.
Well, but you gotta. What I'm trying to say as well is that, like, I was getting turn 2 pushed on repeatedly, and nobody had interaction, and I couldn't do anything. There
Yep.
was one game where literally I had to play for a draw and help out a Rog Thrash player to stop a Kinnan, by him like noxious reviving a pyroblast to the top of my library, like just dumb stuff, like just to stop other people from winning. Like I played extremely reactive this
Yep.
tournament,
Yep.
and it was because people on like literally Kinnan, were pushing turn 2 repeatedly. I ran into like 4 games. I got turn 2'd, and I was like, okay, that's my job, not your job.
That's the gulag slop, right? That's the
Yeah.
place where everybody is playing hyper irresponsible, whatever. I think it would be useful or hopefully helpful if we sort of did a recap of how we got here, why the list is the way it is, and how we can move forward. Kellen, are you okay with giving me doing just a quick brief history of time
Sure.
as sort of like how we arrived here? Okay. So basically, the last time we had this conversation, there was a shift towards turbo, where we were losing because the person who went first was just winning. And this wasn't just happening in the gulags; this was happening at top tables. This was happening at top 16. Turbo was, doing well, winning tournaments. You had Vivi, Itali, all this stuff. And so our strategy was to beat Turbo, you have to race them and go faster, and you have to win more uninteractably. And so we created a version of the deck that could do that. And then Sylvie won Fishbowl. So we had a deck that could go first and could go first in a way that was nearly unstoppable for that time. Nowadays, things have changed because going first is losing. Why? Because these turbo control decks are able to stop the person going first, and they didn't exist in the same way then as they do now. So what does that mean for us? Does it mean changing our deck so that we are slower? I personally don't think so. I think if we do that, we are sacrificing the turn 2 potential that gets us through the gulag. However, I think what we could think about is dedicating a couple of slots towards mid-range play patterns that get through the slop, while simultaneously understanding as a pilot when we need to go second, or sorry, when we need to win first, when we need to win turn 2, right? When we need to just race the gulag, when we are going to be facing those irresponsible opponents, playing irresponsible decks, and when we need to go second. I think this is the best win second deck in the format, like by far. And so the way to beat these turbo control decks is to just wait to go after the person that's going second. You might already have the burnt offering into Pier or the burnt offering into Citadel. You might already have the way to do it, but if you just take a turn off and you wait and you just uptick with your Tymna, uptick with some value pieces, you sit on the trigger until you can pull it. And I think if we just do that, that's how we're going to be successful. Watching Joey play at Breach the Bay, that's what made him successful. He actually faced a lot more control than he was expecting. So he had to wait. He had to pick his window. I think that's all this is. I don't think we need to change the sauce too much because the recipe is working. We have a freaking 19% conversion rate. That's kind of crazy. That means that the deck is working. That means that anyone can pick up the deck and 1 in 5 people will convert. The list is good. It's the piloting we need to think about, and it's the play patterns and maybe a couple of slots that we can reconsider mid-game in order to convert those wins.
So
That's kind of what I'm thinking. What do you guys
Can I
think?
ask you a
I think to kind of summarize it, it's a Mexican standoff, and we need to not pull the trigger first.
What?
Yes, but
So
you're
do
going
you
to
have any
want to
advice
because you're
on
going to have it.
Do you have any
Yeah.
You
advice
want the
on
list to
pulling the
give it to
trigger
you.
before Ristics? Like, what's your advice on the window through 4
I
or 5 Ristics on board?
Random
Somebody,
ball.
So I might,
hold
I'm
on,
going to
hold on.
jump in a little bit here on
Yeah,
this one
thank you.
because I think it's worth talking about metas, and I think it's worth talking about what the actual strategy behind these Ristic decks. I think it's worth talking about why you're seeing Kinnons going faster, and what we can do. Because I think Jared's point that the deck is actually relatively well built is correct. I think he's also correct that a lot of this does come down to strategic decision making on the pilot's part. I think it also comes down to understanding what the meta is. You see certain matchups doing what they are, and why some metas are actually different than others. So a point, something you got to understand, just going off of this, do we go faster, do we go slower? It's a bit of a false dichotomy, which is that some matchups you want to be faster, some matchups you want to be slower, and you actually want the deck to be able to do both, depending on what you're facing. So, for example, if you're against Rogsai, it actually pays to go off second because they're going to launch into the interaction first. But if you're against one of these Ristic Slops decks, you really need to try to be cooking off with an abolisher before they land one of them. And this gets into things about tempo. It's about the white splash and how that's used in Mardu in general, etc. So I guess what I'm going to do is we'll talk about going from Kalia to this older kind of Mardu theory. Yeah. So there's 2 different metas right now. There's the invitational meta, and then there is what I'm calling an open meta, which are these larger tournaments that you're seeing a bunch of players flock to. I guess there's technically a third meta, which is your locals, and we can talk about that. The primary difference between all of these metas is threat assessment. Okay, and threat assessment does encompass politics. Politics is a function, a subset of threat assessment. Okay, you think about the purpose of politics. Politics, the entire reason why it exists in this game is to shift one of your opponent's abilities to threat assess your board, hand, position, etc. So at an NV meta, and this is probably, let's start here because it's kind of the most autistic and just game theory optimal setting. At an NV meta, politics barely exists because everybody knows each other's tricks. Everybody is able to independently and accurately threat assess each other. And this is why you see certain cEDH celebrities consistently failing when they play in the Invies. And the folks who do the best at the Invies tend to be those with the decks that can basically bust through defensive strategies and actually who know how to play or leverage the turn order simulator the best, which we can talk about because that gets into the whole timing thing, et cetera, et cetera. Yeah, politics doesn't work when everybody kind of is aware of what the fuck's going on. So now we can talk about our
that's why
meta.
Thrasvile fucked up like shit at the top deck at the midseason invitational. Jacob, I think exactly what you're saying is right. I think that's why Thrasvile was able to cheat in and do so well, right?
Yeah, yes. So it's why Thrasvile does well. It's why Tally did well. It's why Rog Thras consistently bottoms out and is like among the worst performing decks at any of these Invies, is because that deck is designed to leverage politics. We have to talk about like the strategy. We're going to go deeper on that shit in a second, like in terms of how these things are built, why they win. But yes, your observation is correct, and it's worth keeping in mind as we go forward.
48 degrees.
Yeah, and we're also going to have to talk, because this is also getting into things like cEDH. What does cEDH do? Why does cEDH win? You know, different archetypes in cEDH, like proper discussion of theory archetypes in this format, not your retarded mid-range storm stacks breakdown that you see a lot of content creators chirping on. Like, I mean, proper analysis of what the fuck is going on with the mechanics in this game. So we can go very deep. I don't want to go that deep yet, but all right. So yeah, Envy meta, autistic meta, everybody's playing game theory optimum. It's why you see what you see doing there. Politics does not work, or if it does work, it tends to prey on overconfidence. See Zach's win at the 2025 Envy and how he was able to yap other well-known cEDH celebrities who hadn't properly threat assessed some of what was going on. It's a very rare, meaning you can't actually use politics very often in the meta. But you know, when you get it that 1% of the time where it actually matters, it can be important. So let's talk about your local metas next. Local metas are the exact opposite of the Envy. And the reason why is because everybody has over threat assessed each other. It's because you're playing with these same, I don't know, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60 players every single day for a year, and they all know each other's tells. And in this environment, you'll actually end up getting over threat assessed. This is what Joey has run into with Tymna Dargo in the Pacific Northwest. It's what I am running into with Kalia. And this is a big deal. This tends to feel stagnating. It can condition some play patterns which actually are not accurate for how you should optimally play this deck. And the reason why is because when you're being over threat assessed, you're seeing opponents doing crazy shit, like mulling for Force of Will to stop your early attempt. That causes a shift in your own play patterns, where you keep a more mid-rangey hand in response, because that's what beats the Force of Will. But then when you do this, you might end up being conditioned for bad play patterns, which matter for an open meta, where you're actually supposed to go turbo burr. So there's a rock, paper, scissors effect here, and I want you guys to think about how this matters and etc. So yeah, local metas, over threat assess, everybody knows each other. It's hyper political because everybody, instead of adapting the decks, what they're against each other to actually be a better deck, what they're doing is they're just shifting the 3v1. So cEDH is an oscillating game. It changes between a cooperative game. So it starts off as a free-for-all, 1v1, v1, shifts to a cooperative game. As players identify a threat, somebody pulls ahead, and then you see a 3v1. When that player is neutralized, the 3v1 shifts again. So you just see this rotating 3v1 around the table, essentially, until somebody breaks ahead. And local metas, essentially what they do is they get deeper in on the 3v1 shit because it's just simply more time and energy efficient for them to politic each other than it is to actually change what their decks do or build a different deck. So this is I'm gonna dovetail in here about me and Kalia, then I'm gonna talk about the open meta, which is what you guys that's the purpose of this discussion, essentially. So what I noticed in Kalia is that I'm consistently putting up early wins, doing all that. I can even smash my locals pretty consistently, but it's just kind of wading through a slog where I'm getting hyperthreat-assessed. And so it was like, all right, well, why the fuck is Tymna Dargo doing well when I'm basically just as fast, maybe better, objectively better at fighting the control decks, objectively better at fighting the stacks decks, but I'm being crushed by all these other things. What I basically found is that people fucking suck at threat assessing Tymna Dargo. Like, they're absolutely fucking awful at it. And so what you can do is you can beat in 3 turns with Tymna, but you can capitalize on these really low windows, mana windows, basically with your sacrifice or burnt offering. And these are huge advantages. So even though maybe the deck's like, I don't know, 0.2% faster, it's really these tiny little edges of perception and just timing that give it a big, big edge. And I think, unfortunately, people will be over threat assessing Tymna Dargo as time goes on, because it's going to be good at fighting these blue slot decks. But I'll get into that in a second. All right, so what the fuck is an open meta? Open meta, these are your big tournaments. Misplay on the Lake would be an example. These are your huge events where you're seeing people from around the country or the state coming in to all butt heads. And in this environment, these are where decks like Ragashai and such are really most built to capitalize on. And the reason why is because a lot of the folks who are going and playing in these things tend to be scared. They tend to be maybe not the best because it's their first tournament, or they only get to go to tournaments every once in a while. And they're trying to capitalize on that pipe dream of, hey, I'm going to win, and then I'm set for the series, and then I'm good. So fear tends to be the baseline thing. People tend to play a little bit more conservatively. And this is a long, long known effect going back all the way to fucking 2015 in cEDH. Ragashai in this environment is masterfully built to take advantage of these emotions, because what it does is it presents itself to the table as quote unquote the good guy. You can trust me to stop the early bad guy turbo deck, but it comes at the cost of you guys politicking with me, so I get to know your hands, and you let me land my card advantage piece, because I need those cards to fight the scary turbo deck. You just pick a scapegoat in the pod, hyper-politic them, pull ahead on card advantage, and turn the other 2 players into extensions of your own hand. So in terms of math,
So
it's that
just to like quick continue after I make this point. If you did not watch the finals of today's tournament, that's exactly verbatim what happened. Was Andy showed the blue farm player Mino have interaction for the GA. Got to the point where it's like, damn, we have to fight together. You're gonna draw me a fuck ton of cards to do things. At no point, Beach knew if he kept his Stormkill artist out, he was going to win that game. Convinced the player, everyone around him, to just not kill Stormkill artist, and waited till the very end of the stack to go, Storm Trigger, give me 17 treasures, I win. That was it. That's all he did. So just to prove Jacob's point here of like, well, I don't really see that a lot. That's exactly what happened in the finals today. Like verbatim. You can continue now.
Thank you. No, that's great. I'm actually very glad you interjected. I appreciate that.
Yeah.
So the math in terms of why this works, because the perfect example of this shit, but I think it makes a little bit more sense when you can think about this with math. And of course, somebody who has not a math background is always the one fucking talking about math, but so it goes with life. So everybody starts with fucking 7 cards in hand in cEDH. It's 7, D7, D7, D7. However, and in this kind of environment, trading 1 for 1 is awful. If you trade a swords and plowshares for one of your opponent's creatures, you've gone down 1 card, one of your opponents has gone down 1 card. Because this is a zero-sum game, you have effectively traded 1 card for 1/3 of the opposing table's card advantage. And the reason why is because it's a zero-sum game. It means there can only be 1 winner. it's actually your 7 versus a combined opponent's hand of 21 cards. You are always on the back end in this format, and that is why it feels awful to trade with the Rhystic Study on the stack or to do something. This is why people sandbag their counterspells. So if there's an ad nauseum coming down, usually they won't counter it unless somebody's gone, I don't know, Rite of Flame, Dark Ritual, ad nauseum. And that's because it hits that 3-for-1 cap. So opponents cast 3 spells, you cast 1, you have effectively traded even in this format. This is the fundamental basis for why cEDH control is different than what you see in terms of control in other formats. What does this also mean? When can a deck take the control role? A deck can take the control role when it is drawing roughly 3 cards per turn cycle. Tymna plus 2 attackers. Did you hear that? Tymna plus 2 attackers. Rhystic plus 2 spells being cast into it. If the opponent's card advantage is hitting this mark, you're effectively dead, you just don't know it. And this is one of the biggest things for identifying suckers in the room, is because a lot of people can't tell which is more dangerous. Is it more dangerous to swallow the pill with cyanide, or is it more dangerous to deal with the opponent with a gun? I don't know. Well, one's already in your system, the other one's outside. You tell me. So,
Doesn't matter.
yeah.
The basis of this, guys, is you're dead either way.
Right.
Right.
So what these decks do, like what Ragashai is designed to do, is it says, hey, I'm really friendly. I'm on your side. Give me your 7 cards in hand. I'm going to play with them too. Oh, give me your 7 cards. So now instead of being the controlled, instead of having to fight, it's 7 against the opposing 21, it is now the 21 card hand versus your 7, because you are the scapegoat. You are the bad guy. And now it has triple card advantage against you. And it furthers this lead by dropping its own Rhystic effects, which then get further amplified, not just by the scapegoat trying to pull out, but also by the 2 marks, the dupes, the idiots, who feed it, thinking that feeding it helps free them and positions them ahead. Rhystic in this deck is a slow ad nauseum, and failing to understand that is fatal. So in terms of how do you fight it, and by the way, actually, this is part of the reason why Kinnons and such are going faster right now, because traditionally they have been the control deck as their own, but they are realizing that if everybody else is keeping kind of defensive hands, they can just keep offensive ones and capitalize on that window of opportunity. Basically, it's just people are being fooled into it. So in terms of how do you beat this from our end, well, the answer is you need to do it through card quality. You can't fucking beat a 21 card hand. There's no equitable trade that you can make like that. You have to time your Grand Abolisher on the same turn that you're going off, or you have to be able to counter-politic them and show how dangerous that Rhystic is. And you can do this, by the way, by appealing to opponent's greed. So, and then we can talk about it, deeper strategies in this shit. But this is, so problems with Tymna Dargo. The problem of playing like an early Abolisher, so going Abolisher turn 2, then trying to win on turn 3, as Kellen said, it's pretty easy to disrupt. This comes down to tempo, and it comes down to mana issues, if you will, with Tymna Dargo, which is it's very hard for this deck to generate double white on the combo turn. So it tends to break up its protection across 2 turns. One to put down the Abolisher, the protection, second turn to go off. And this is because its combo colors are really heavily black-red. And there aren't really any black-red Abolisher effects, barring like Squelcher or D-Grid. And I would argue that Squelcher is a fucking trap. So what you're really being pushed into...
You're spoiling me. You're spoiling the big reveal, but go ahead.
Definitely a trap. Definitely a trap.
Yeah, I'll let you go deeper on that one. I'm just gonna put it out there. So what I think is the solution ultimately is playing more into the strengths of white, but then also being a little bit easier on generating the double white, specifically on the combo turn, because that way you're sandbagging the Abolisher until you're ready to go off. I'm trying some shit with Sneak Attack and Reanimator, and Sneak Attack is basically incorporating some of Kalia's strategies in, which is that I can go underneath the interaction. So sack Rector, find Sneak Attack. Now I've got a hasty Razaketh coming up your ass. Reanimator, advantage there. it's the most mana efficient combo in the game because you can just go off like a dark ritual. You know, you need 1 black for Entomb and 1 black for Reanimate. So in that case, it's much easier for me to go and send a lot more mana towards the Abolisher effects. To Sylvia and Joey's credit, this is where they're experimenting a bit more with the Final Fortune effects. So if you can go white, white, Abolisher, red, red, extra turn, GG. And this is a little bit more interesting if you're going deeper on Storm. So these are a few different
So
variations and ideas.
I do want to ask you. You mentioned how we should be trying to ease ourselves more on the white white for our turn that we win, so we can cast Grand Abolisher and win.
Yes.
What do you think about running more Ruberg lands like Tarnished Citadel and stuff like that?
Can I
Uh,
input? Can I answer that? Because I've done some stuff regarding that. I'll just chip in
Yeah,
and then
sure.
I'll let you answer that, Jacob. The treasure production, that's the answer. The treasure production and
Correct,
having
actually.
tempo with treasure production is incredibly important. Instead of making your mana base worse by running things that take your life, which you would normally be spending to gain card advantage, because again, if we have to win through card quality, black has the best card quality in the game, period. Bolas's Citadel
No,
representing
no.
20 cards. If black,
Well,
okay,
we can talk
if
about it. Go
card
for it. Go
quality
for it.
is,
Go for it.
yeah, if black,
Go for it.
okay, if black as a whole, right, if card quality is my card is worth how many of your cards, black has the highest density of high quality cards by that definition. Yes, it doesn't have Ristic and things like that, but single black cards can represent the most amount of cards all at once as single cards. So, but that's a whole separate thing. I think the treasure production is how you get the double white, which is why Knuckles was a really important inclusion because it converts red into white mana the same turn. So you can go for your burnt offering effect while also still having double white because you just sacked 2 treasures, and you can go for the Grand Abolisher or the Voice of Victory, whatever white you need. And so I would say not making the mana base worse by running Tarnished Citadel and paying 3 life for your white mana, which could represent 3 cards off Necropotence or a card off a Citadel, or 3 is 2 cards off of Adnaz if your average CMC is less than 1.5, which it should be. You don't want to pay life for things that would otherwise be spent to gain card advantage if it is your objective to beat your opponents with card quality. So I would say it's the treasure production. That's the only thing I wanted to add. But yeah.
Which
Well, I
brings
think
me
you're right. I think
to.
that's yeah.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
There's one more caveat to this, which I think is correct. But you can go with tempo, and what tempo really is, let's just define it because this is a big bugaboo card in all formats, not just cEDH, where nobody knows what it is. Tempo and what tempo advantage is actionable, meaning usable mana advantage or board position relative to what your opponents are doing. Okay, so in Magic, you play 1 land per turn. On turn 1, you have 1 mana available. On turn 2, you have 2 mana available, and so on and so forth. However, if you play turn 1 land, turn 1 Black Lotus, you are playing on turn 4 effectively while still being turn 1. You have a 3-turn tempo advantage over your opponents. Okay? So this is a big deal in terms of actually understanding what the fuck tempo is. So these powerful ritual effects like burnt offering, sacrifice, etc., they accelerate you to it basically accelerates you 7 to 5 turns ahead of your opponents if you land one. And yes, by the way, as people start to hyper politic at Dada to Dargo, which will happen going forward, you should expect your rituals and your tutors to be countered a lot more often because this is the weak point, stack interaction wise. So treasure generation, massive, especially with the little shitter dorks, because they don't give your opponents any vision. You know, you just play your Dargo, sack them, now you have the white mana to go off. You can also get a similar effect with your talisman effects. This is negative tempo, so when you play it on the turn it comes down, it sucks, but then the turn after, you've accelerated a full turn cycle forward. And then finally, you can do it by fucking, yeah, like what Jared said with these kind of accumulator things like Knuckles or Smothering Tithe, whatever.
So, which brings us to the big reason why I wanted to be here was a lot of the card discussion that we've been doing this week what a lot of people have been doing this week, and why. I know he doesn't want to talk in this little meeting, but his name is the Incredible Ka. I'm just gonna call him Ka from at this point. Uh, him and I have been brewing this Reanimator list for Dargo for the last, I don't know, 2 weeks, man, something like that. And we've been doing, and when I mean brewing, I've probably talked to this guy more about brewing this deck in the last 2 weeks than most people I've talked to my entire time playing this deck. Right? Like we've been brewing constantly, tweaking, constantly talking about things that we should be doing, what we can do. And I'm not saying, hey, you need to jump on my list. That is not what I'm saying at all. I'm going to give you the reasons why I'm doing what I'm doing and why I think when he first presented this idea to me, I'm like, man, I think Reanimator would be really cool in Dargo. And Jacob, around the same time, was doing the same thing. He was like, man, we should do a Reanimator list. And he messaged me and was like, I think we should do this. And he sent me some stuff. And I'm like, I believe in the way this is going to be presented or why this is going to work. I believe that it's going to work in this meta in particular for a lot of reasons. Number one, you're going to notice that a lot of our math and a lot of things that we've done in past town hall meetings, if you want to go back and look at those through the information page, you're going to notice that we want as many big payoff effects that we can, meaning Pier, meaning Citadel, meaning Necro, meaning uh, ad nauseum. We wanted as many of those things in the deck as we could to maximize our ability to hit a silence effect, hit a payoff as quickly as we could, right? That was the whole point of the first time we ever did these things, and JB was showing us all the math with all the all that stuff. Which, by the way, if you're not noticing a theme between all the stuff that we've been doing, it's not just vibes. I'm very much a big data guy. Like I like looking at data. I'm not saying that I'm an expert, but what I am saying is I think that data makes sense and data should drive our ability to do things. It works in education, so it works here too. But you're going to notice one big glaring piece I'm missing in my artifacts list, and that's no Citadel. Now, why? The reason why, and we'll talk about other cards right now. I'm talking about some of the bigger omissions that everyone is running that I am not running anymore. The reason why is this. And I've been told by multiple people, including Jacob and other people as well, that final parting just isn't it. It's not a good return. It's not a good investment. And I think that I'm not the greatest deck builder, but the vibe on this one tells me this is going to work. And the reason why is I think that we need to look at when we look at cards in the deck and when we're looking at cards that are what are we trying to do and what does this card purpose give for me? If we are casting a card for 5 mana or more, historically speaking in this deck, we are expecting to win the game. I know, and I know I'm going to hear it from a lot of people already, or I know I'm going to get the eye roll. I'm like, there's plenty of times I've casted Adnals on turn 2 and I did not win the game. There's plenty of times I put a Citadel out turn 2 and I didn't win the game. That is not what I am saying. What I am saying is when you invested the 5 mana, or when you invested the 6 mana into Citadel, or you invest the 7 mana into Pier, your expectation is to what? Win the game. Right then, right there. That if you were casting Citadel or Ad Nauseum and your intent was to not win the game, I don't know what we're doing here. We're not playing the same game at that point. I'm not saying that you're wrong and that you are a bad player. What I am saying is that doesn't make a lot of sense to me in the way I've seen cEDH being played over the last few years. I just don't see it. Now, here's the thing. Are there also other niche situations where you're sitting there going, well, I casted Adnaz into no interaction and I politicked my way to refill my hand. That's different. That's not why you ran Adnaz to begin that's not why you ran Adnaz to begin the game, right? Like you didn't put this in the deck to go, hey man, I really want to cast Ad Nauseam to get 5 cards in pass turn, right? Like if that was your intent and that was your idea, then you can correct me, and I apologize for calling you out. But the intent was not there for 90% of people, at least. But what we are doing here is saying final parting, although I know it is a much different outlet and a much different way, will win the game for 6 mana. What does that mean? It means final parting goes and gets Razaketh and a Reanimate. I've invested 6 mana, right? Well, Kellen, you needed to cast a creature as well to do the thing. You are so correct. Let's take that into account and say I casted 7 mana over a span of 2 turns, or even the same turn. Either way, don't care. And I put out a greedy freebooter and then reanimated Razaketh. That's still winning the game. Razaketh tutors Lion's Eye, which tutors or Greedy Freebooter, crack Greedy Freebooter, go get Lion's Eye, crack Lion's Eye, crack a treasure, cast Dargo, get Underworld Breach, win the game. That is I am definitively winning the game here. And I invested 6 mana or 7 mana over the course of 2 turns to get that to happen. Citadel does not translate that way. Citadel ideally translates that way, but there's too many times in the math, and there's too many times where we sat there and gone, yeah, I got the Citadel, but I bricked. If I'm going to cast 6 mana and I'm going to cast 7 mana, I want that percentage of times that I'm bricking to be even less. Now, I'm not going to sit here and also say that Citadel's a bad card. I ran Citadel. It is, again, to be clear, I want to be clear at my position where I'm coming from, right? So in my play nice, right? We all have our, we all have these, and hopefully you're posting on the Dargo Discord one. And if you're not, yeah, you make me sad, and that's it. But if I'm just looking at Dargo, by the way, if you're not recording on Play Nice period, then you probably need to like figure that out too. MVP cards. So we are clear. Dockside, obviously, when Dockside was around, was the #1 card in every red deck. I don't think there's any surprise there. What's my #2 MVP? It's Citadel. So I'm not going to sit here and tell you, right, that Citadel's a bad card. I'm not saying it's a bad card. I'm not saying you should cut it. I'm not saying that you should not run it anymore. What I am saying here is kind of what Jacob was saying, is that our card, we have to make it matter. Because 90% of the time, we don't get a second chance. We're not going to sit here and go, oh man, I did the thing and I bricked. Oops. And I casted like 5 spells. So I actually drew the guy with the double Rhystic Study, 10 cards in the process. Then you're done. The game's over, right? The game's over at that point, right? Now, I will say as well, coming into this, one of the cards that has been talked about a lot in this deck recently, and I want to be also very clear about this, that I am a big fan of this card, is Rakdos the Muscle. Now, I am looking, me and Ka have been looking at this, right? And we've been thinking, well, actually, this might get back into the deck. And here's the thought process why.
He's good if you cost 2 mana.
Because, yes, he just said it. When you run Reanimator and Tomb Reanimate Rakdos, Rakdos at 2 mana is bonkers, right? We all agree that this is a bonkers card when it hits, when it does its thing, right? Joey said on his last tournament, like, even if he didn't have a Tidebiter thrown at him, he would have won. Like, yeah, Rakdos is bomb. But we're also talking about, if you're not on Reanimator, you're talking about an investment of 6 to 7 mana, right? Now let's talk about the other cards that I just mentioned: Citadel, Nauseam, Pier, all of which are 5 or 6 mana investments, right? We all agree. All of those cards, sans Citadel. So I mean, I've already talked about Citadel, baby. Like, it's RNG related, so I'm not going to be like hype too much about that. Just a second, Jacob. Just one moment. Rakdos to hit on the same turn it comes down is still a 6 mana investment. Bare minimum, right? Because you have Rakdos and Dargo and a Rakdos sack. That's 6 mana. That's the least amount of mana you can use to cast Rakdos and get cards. How many cards do you see off that? 7. Adnos for 5 mana sees 20. Pier for 7 mana sees like 35 to 40. They are not the same. However, as Ka just said, and talking about Reanimator and stuff like that, the reason why I think Rakdos is good is when you can go, you know what, Rakdos for 2, or Rakdos for 5, or Rakdos for like whatever, like some arbitrary amount for Entomb effect and Rakdos or Reanimate. That's a very different discussion. Plus, you have this more the ability to like play off of other abilities and sacks for Rakdos to see more cards at that time. Now, Jacob is going to jump in here and talk about card quality and Reanimator, and then we'll go from there on other cards that I would like to discuss and other things that we've been talking about throughout the week. But Jacob, go ahead.
Roger that. Thanks, Colin. So just very quickly, some stuff on cEDH Reanimator theory, and then also on card quality and card advantage. This is just dovetailing off of what Kellen's saying, but I think it's kind of important conceptually. So cEDH Reanimator fills a very weird niche, which is that the fastest archetype in this game always is Storm. And that's because Storm is the easiest one-card combo to pull off. So you have the most copies of your mana cards in Storm, and you have the most copies of your payoff cards in Storm. That's why it always is the fastest. It's card efficiency that really gets you there. Reanimator is a little bit slower than Storm because it's an A plus B or a 2-card Monty deck. You need an Entomb effect, some way to put the fatty in the graveyard, and you need a reanimation effect to get it. And that's just simply harder to find, statistically, than a mana card and a payout card. So a little bit slower. The advantage of having a Reanimator deck or a Reanimator pivot to your deck is your card quality off of the top gets stronger. Because as you're beating in, those Reanimator effects kind of can play like clones. You can reanimate anybody's anything from any graveyard. Your Entomb effects are also extra tutors, especially which is very powerful, which you can pair with Breach. Okay, so you're sacrificing a little bit of speed for more mana efficiency. You can do a lot more with a lot less mana. And you can also wriggle through like tighter windows of opportunity, so you're more resilient. In terms of the fatties and selection there, you're going to notice that like Kellen isn't talking about a card like Elish Norn. He's talking about Rakdos, Razaketh, Villis, Hoarding Broodlord. The targets, the Reanimator targets, essentially, these are ad nauseum effects. They are engine Storm cards. They might not look like it. Hoarding Broodlord might look like a tutor, but you're never actually playing it like one. It's an engine. It's converting one source of fuel. It's converting fuel into motion, just like, ad nauseum converts life into cards. So what's the trade-off here? Why are we looking at pieces like this? Well, Storm engines like this on the front half, if you're hard casting a big fucking monster or whatever, that sucks. It's an 8 mana, a 5 to 8 mana spell. Awful. But if you're reanimating it, it's a 1 to 3 mana spell, which is pretty fucking good. What happens if it gets countered? Well, it's sitting in the graveyard, so you can reanimate it again later. So if you start to think about these things like an ad nauseum effect from the grave, it's going to open up, kind of ideas in terms of how you play around with them. This gets nicely to card quality and card advantage. So Jared's point about black being able to generate positive card advantage is true. If you want the most bang for your buck, a single black engine, Storm engine card, like one of these Reanimator fatties and ad nauseum, whatever, that's going to draw the most of these things. There is no competition except blues Enter the Infinite and maybe Ristic when it pops off. But there's another point to discuss here, which is the white effects. Pieces like Abolisher, they work via something called virtual card advantage, which is that they gain you cards in hand by turning off pieces in opponents' hands. So if you say your opponents across the table, one's got Flusterstorm, one's got Swan Song, there's a Dispel and a Swords of Plowshares, and you cast your Grand Abolisher, you've mind twisted your opponents. They've all basically discarded, 1 to 2 cards each, which is very powerful. So if you're playing with these kind of Reanimator effects where you have black, and this is kind of Mardu's role, which is that we're a Rakdos deck, which is we're a very aggressive Storm deck, but then we have these very powerful white card quality pieces, which can blank opponents' hands. This is kind of our Thoughtseize effect, if you will. That's the power here. And this is, again, why there's a possibility for something like Tymna Dargo Reanimator to really, really shine, because it's, you can just pair white and black very well together. So yeah, that's all I got, Kelly.
All right, perfect. So kind of what he's saying right here, targets for why Reanimator is, in my opinion, like something we should look at a little bit more. Now let's just say, right, we don't want to run Razaketh, and we're saying I'm not a big fan of it. I think I go all in with Razaketh and I get blown out because there's a bounce spell. I don't like running the big fatties. I don't like doing stuff like that. Why? I'm just gonna go back to Citadel and doing the thing. And my question to you is, well, okay, do we have other things, the A plus B? This gives us the A plus B, right? How many other A plus Bs do we have in this deck? Namely, what is another combo that we can get here that's 100% creature based that works off of just Final Parting? Ruthless and Jolly. You entune the Jolly, you play the Ruthless from your hand, you reanimate the Jolly, you copy, and you win. That is a very simple. I have 5 mana and then 4 for the Ruthless. That's 9 mana total, which generally speaking is what we need to do anyways to be casting a pure raw. We have a ritual or something like that. We're talking about the same shit, right? This is why I think Citadel right now is not in my wheelhouse and not in my favor, which also allows us to get rid of Welder without any loss of any tempo or any loss of like your ability to be I'm not gonna say have agency because I know Jacob's gonna jump down my throat. Your ability to you don't need Welder anymore. Welder was there for Citadel. Welder was there to do Citadel shenanigans, but it's not there anymore. So now that we open up another slot, right now, some of you are thinking, "Why wasn't on Welder to begin with?" So now what? Okay, that's totally fair. I get that. A lot of people are running Memnite. A lot of people are running other things, and I just wanted to be clear that not only with the white, like as many silence effects as we can to maybe get to feel more comfortable at that point, but you also have things like Rector that is just a second copy of many different Swiss Army knife things. If you look at the enchantment package, Black Market Connections right now is, I'll talk about that when it comes to tempo, but Academy Rector gets every single scenario piece that you need. I need a removal piece, Static Prison. I need to reanimate, Animate Dead. I need the B to my A to because I have Bergie out, Goblin Bombardment. I have a graveyard. I need to storm off, Breach. I need cards in my hand, Necropotence. I need mana, Smothering Tithe. It has every single scenario I need. I just need the tempo, Black Market Connections. Necropotence is just scary. Now, when Jacob mentioned, hey man, Ristic is just slow Adnaz, you'll also notice that the 2 cards that I'm not seeing in my deck right now are Pier and Citadel. You're not going to politic either of those cards resolving ever in the history of ever if they already had the interaction for you. So unless you have that silence effect and you have that ability to go, hey, you're not going to get a say in the matter. I'm not politicking this shit. I'm just doing this shit. That's what Pier and Citadel are, right? There's no world where any good player sits there and goes, yeah, man, you can value Citadel, or yeah, man, you can value Pier, unless they already have a way to stop you. I know this because it's happened to me enough times, right? And I'm not going to sit here and say, well, my experience is the experience, but I'm pretty sure I'm one of the only players that's been in here a long enough time to have enough experiences to say this isn't just anecdotal. I think this is good enough for data. Lots of people here have had like some play experience. Not a lot have had as many as me. But I digress, and I get to the point of we want these payoffs to not only A, definitively win us the game, but also B, you can politic it. If I cast Final Parting and they go, tell me why I shouldn't stop this right now, I can go get value pieces with Final Parting. I can get something that's going to be unassuming. I don't have to get a Necro. I don't have to get uh I don't have to go get a win. I don't have to get a Necro. I don't have to get a Breach. I can go get Tithe or Black Market, right? I can go get any of my little value pieces in my creature deck, like any of these. I'll go get a Mayhem Devil, right? And then in the grave, I'll put Walter because eventually I can get that back, right? We don't have to do anything like that. And I'm just using Final Parting as an example because no one else is using this right now except for us two. And it's just an example I'm just going to use for this point. Adnaz. I have resolved plenty of Adnaz effects where I've been, hey, I know you have the interaction. I'm going to dig like 7 cards. 7 non-land cards is all I'm asking. All right? That's a viable thing. You make deals like that. But you're never going to make a deal with a peer. And you're never going to make a deal with a Citadel. It's never going to happen. I have now reached a point where even my academy director, some people will go, I had a game the other day with Zach in his YouTube like, thing. And he's like, you can resolve the Necro, but you're only drawing 4 cards at a time ever. I can work with that. That's a heuristic study for us. That's just all that is, right? But I had a game the other day where I casted an Academy Rector off of a Beseech the Mirror because I'm like, there's no way they can stop this unless they have a Mind Break Trap, and there was no way to politic out of that Mind Break Trap. There just was not. So it is what it is on that point with Necropotence, but it can be politics. It's not necessarily going to be. So card selection is going to be something we want we want good card quality selection, and we want every time we invest our mana and invest our time, invest our resources, for it to be either a slam dunk or damn near, right? You need to be able to win on the same turn as you play your silence. I've seen too many times in the last 2 weeks where I could do Grand Abolisher, pass. It doesn't make it to on my table by the time it gets to my turn again, which means my window just closed. And a way to be able to do stuff like that is with cards that are less mana intensive, like Final Parting and Reanimate, like those things. Now, going back to that idea of Rakdos, okay? You can do that for 2 mana and see 14 cards and probably win the game doing your Storm off turn when you have a Reanimator effect. Or 5 mana and then casting Dargo and then sacrificing Dargo with a Sacrifice Spectre Burnt Offering can dig you enough cards to do the thing. But 5 mana for a burst on turn 2 is, again, an unassuming thing. Rakdos can stay out for a turn, right? And be like, yeah, he's just a big flying boy. And then the next turn go, Grand Abolisher, now go off and do my thing. Which is much more viable and much more available to you than Bolas' Citadel. Now, going from that ideology, and why am I even considering Rakdos after all the shit I've been talking about Rakdos over the last week? And after all this time in this meeting that I've said, Rakdos is not the mana investment we want it to be. One of the biggest things that I've been concerned with in this meta is not the fact that we're not able to produce fuel. Mana production in this deck is insane. I think we can all agree. Mana production is insane in this deck. My biggest concern is the ability to get cards. Rakdos provides that. Citadel provides that. Pier provides that. Adnos provides that. Necro provides that. Right? Yawgmoth provides that in a much smaller way, but it does provide that. Professional Facebreaker provides it in its own way. Right? So if I'm going to have a card that's going to produce something, my number one priority now is card advantage, or ability to get cards into hand or playable. Number two would be my mana. And if my mana is going to be produced, or if my mana is going to be like, if I want to invest something for mana, I want it to have the highest ceiling possible, and I want it to produce insane amounts of mana. Now, I've also been hearing a lot of talk about how Smothering Tithe isn't that great. And then at the last town hall meeting, I said, nah, Smothering Tithe needs to be a thing. And there was pushback, and some said, yeah, well, I'm still running it anyways. And now there's a talk of Smothering Tithe and Trouble in Pairs being a thing. Right? That's another big hot button topic that people have been talking about lately. What Jared said and what Jacob said, right? Kind of doing both of what their ideas are, is we don't want to sacrifice our ability to push early and our card quality so we can play the mid-range game. But I know some people have been testing Trouble in Pairs to some success. I know some people have been testing other cards, like Archivist of Agma, if I'm not mistaken. What are some of the things that you guys have been feeling as far as getting cards into your hand? Has anyone had success with Trouble in Pairs, with Archivists, with other cards? No?
Hope of Gearper is a very gas card that is a silence and card draw with Tymna. That's been a big thing for me this weekend in testing even more. Just the extra card from the flyer, even.
Yes, I would agree. I think cards like that, the more juice we can squeeze out of cards, stuff like Hope of Gearper and a Tymna, the better off we're going to be. We have to, because we don't have the massive passive values that the other decks have. And I want to say again, why Smothering Tithe is more of a consideration in my book more than Knuckles is because passive value for existing is one of the mainstays of the meta right now. We need to be able to do it at some respect, or in some way, shape, or form, right?
But what if as soon as we start playing um Tithe, like it just adds to that Ristic slop meta. They just copy your Tithe now, and now they have shit ton of mana and shit ton of card draw. How do we get around that?
The
We need
advantage to
less
that
turns
in
with
this
Tithe than they
deck,
do.
yeah, exactly, is that we have a higher card quality, not card quality necessarily than they do, but like more gas in our deck than they do. Usually, if you're playing a Tide, you should have enough to, if you have enough mana, put together a win. We have such a high density of cards that win the game that usually one turn rotation with a Tide will get you there.
So let me
I
branch
was
out.
I was gonna say, yeah, you get out of it by murdering them. Simple. Like you have a higher density of cards, like HGH just said, that just end the game on the spot. I think the question of Tithe versus Knuckles is mainly a question of tempo more than, oh, what if it gets cloned? Well, they're cloning it because it's a busted ass card. We should probably consider playing busted ass cards.
Yeah.
I don't know. That's my thing on it.
So here's the thing that, like, first of all, about like Tithe, it's arguably a top 2 white card in the game. Like, I can argue Ranger Captain, Silence, Grand Abolisher, Tithe. Those are the big 4, right? And to me, there's let's just put it this way: every single game I have played in the last 2 weeks, I'm not being hyperbolic. I've written down the data. Every single time the person played the Smothering Tithe, that person either won that game or put it to a draw. Now, why do we want to do that in a heuristic slot meta when they're just going to clone our shit? Number one, it's not my job to worry about what people are going to do with their decks. It's my job to try and win the game. That's what this deck does, right? It's not my job to worry about what other people are going to do. It's my job to just do. Number two, as HGH said, this deck is built to squeeze every little sliver of juice out of its cards and its synergies, unlike other decks that are much more reliant on I just need the big engine, the passive engine to win and be able to interact on the stack. And our synergies are just like Underworld Breach and Brain Freeze. What we're doing is when when this deck is built and when we built this deck, we are meant to get more out of little than anybody else. Now, Mike, I know is in here right now. Mike, how many times have you won a game on Dargo Tymna with less than 3 lands in play?
Like almost every game.
Okay.
Or 22 lands.
Yeah. This deck is meant to do more with less. We get more out of our cards than other people do. So now, think of it this way. Think of I always bring this back to like lifters and like athletes. Imagine you have a lifter who is squeezing every little bit of advantage out of and like out of his performance on bench, and then you give him a slingshot chest press. How much more do you think he's going to lift? Like a lot more. That's Smothering Tithe. To me, Smothering Tithe is just this like every game I have Smothering Tithe out, I go Smothering Tithe. Well, I have a risk study. Brother, unless you are really drawing every piece of interaction on every single spell I cast, I'm going to keep pushing. He's not going to unless this game has gone to an insane long time, and turn 3 or turn 4, if people are playing responsibly, they're not going to have enough to beat you. They're just not.
One thing I wanted to bring up about Tithe, and I brought this up in like way back when we were originally talking about Knuckles versus Tithe, and it's in the discussion thread, is that even in these slot games, if you control a Tithe and you're trying to win on your turn, it does one of two things. Either they're going to keep drawing to try to draw into interaction, and you keep getting mana on your winning turn to keep putting more shit on the stack, or they're going to stop drawing to deny you mana. Either way, it's a win-win.
So a lot of people mention like with Trouble in Pairs and Lotho is actually when I played Trouble in Pairs and Lotho, they treat it like a rule of law. And the big argument they like a lot of people have asked me like, well, what about Trouble in Pairs not drawing, turn rotation and stuff like that? If they're only playing one spell a turn and drawing one card a turn, right? We're gonna win. Like I'm okay with that. If they're treating their own board state by choice as a rule of law and a notion thief that like they pretend like that's what's on the board so I don't draw more with Trouble in Pairs, that's a win-win situation. Just like HGH just said, like that's fine. Like you have to play into like kind of what Jacob said earlier. You have to play the player, not the deck. That's the thing is that a lot of us are worried about well, Kinnon's doing this, and Kinnon has not been changed drastically, or it hasn't had revolutionary things happen for it in a long time. Blue Farm, Grixis as a color pie has not had innovative changes since like the early 2000s, right? They do the same shit. We all know what Blue Farm does. We all know what Rockside does. We all know what these things do. It hasn't changed, right? It's not crazy. It's not innovative. What it is, though, consistently, right? We know what it's going to be, so we can at least outpace them, right?
My
We need to
only
use
thing,
our card quality and synergy and squeeze more out of our cards than other people do. Mike, you were about to say something?
yeah, like my only thing when it comes to this is like I always like when I hear these conversations, I feel like we have like unlimited time, And like with Mart, like especially with this deck, there are cards that just literally just say you don't do anything, like silence, right? Like if you haven't set up for a silence, it doesn't matter. Like they have a silence, they're gonna cook you, right? And if they have like if there's a player that knows anything, and the most popular decks right now are white or like the raw Jeskai and shit like that, whatever. It's like we can do all these things, but at the same time, we literally just get stopped by one spell, like a silence or something. So it's like in my mind, I'm thinking, how are we I'm sorry how to like say it, but it's just like these things that we're talking about, like these longer things. Like, it doesn't matter when we're in a draw situation where everyone's drawing a bunch of cards and they don't need a bunch of answers. They only need one. They need Mystical Tutor for a silence or something like that, right? Like that's like my only like pushback on it is that we don't have like you guys are saying like we're just keep churning and churning and churning. It's like there are things that absolutely fucking cook us, and there's nothing that we can usually
Yes.
do about it.
So Mike, one of the
That's
things that you missed from earlier is we said earlier we can't sacrifice any of the deck's speed, but what we need to do is we need to consider maybe 3 to 4 mid-range slots that kind of prepare us for the mid-range. And so right now we're talking about what are those slots? What should those go to? But from sort of, I guess, like a systemic perspective, like we can't make the list slower. Like if we do that, I think, like you, I
Yeah.
agree with you, we lost the plot. But I think what we're saying is there's 3 to 4 slots that we get for the mid game. We're thinking about Trouble in Pairs. I'm trying Archivist of Ogma in the Squelcher slot right now. I'm a huge advocate for Pyre of Heroes as ways to beat these mid game slots. Jacob and Kellen and Ka just talked about um, Reanimator as a strategy that can go into mid range, getting more political agency at the expense of single card outlets. You gain um, you gain more mana efficient combo lines and things like that, and ways to win in the mid game and off of less mana and things like that. And you whiff less too, so there's trade-offs there, but you do tend to sacrifice speed, as Jacob mentioned, in order to get those advantages. Um, so we're trying to think about how much speed can we afford to sacrifice? What pieces should we be considering for these mid-range slots? And we're thinking about the pros and cons of each of those things. Do you guys think that's like a charitable summary of what we've discussed so far?
So far, I would agree. Yes. Out of
I want to
curiosity,
go.
So is fighting mid range? You don't have to mid range to fight in mid range. I think that's also like something that we
Bingo.
maybe disagree on.
Yeah.
Like for me in mid range, if I know there's probably gonna be some mid range bullshit, I'm holding up my Final Fortune, my Silence, and like my Chance for Glory. So because I know it's like even in the mid range bullshit, what's gonna happen a lot of times is one player or two players are gonna take up a disparity amount of the time because all their Ristic triggers and all their fucking triggers and stuff like that. And it's like yes, it's turn 3, but we're an hour and a half into the fucking game, right? So if I know like the stuff like that, for me personally, if I'm going to mid range, I am going to mull for a Final Fortune, way to get Final Fortune, and like a Ranger Captain or some shit. And when someone pops off, silence them, Final Fortune, go to my turn. That's how I like do the mid range. I don't know if adding more shit to slow the deck down. I don't like. What are we grasping? Like with Blue Farm, you get cards, you get mana, you're able to play them all at the same time, right? What are we? I don't know. Yeah.
So actually, I want to comment on this because this is actually the whole thing that I'm talking about with tempo. It's also going to be a defensive smothering tithe, um, which really comes down to like understanding the card, how to use it. You don't have to use it like a mid-range piece. Basically, you can. There's 2 ways to beat the mid-range decks. You either go bigger than them, or you go underneath them. We're kind of why this is tricky and why this is feels frustrating is because we are being squeezed on 2 ends. If we go bigger, we lose out compared to these Raga Shy decks. They just do going bigger better, right? If we try to go under, well, we can't go too low because then we end up with a fragile Rakdos pile, and that just gets stopped with a single piece of interaction. And we're just worse at doing it than a deck like Ral, Itali, Rogsai, whatever. So we can't go too low. So this gets into the point of like tempo, which tempo as an archetype, not as a resource. So explain what tempo as a resource was earlier. It's basically the manifestation of time in the game. Tempo as an archetype is about getting as much value per mana as you possibly can. So in Legacy, your classic tempo deck is like Delver, where on turn 1, you play a volcanic island, you play your Delver, and you're holding up your days. So you've got a 3/3, a free counterspell, and you're just dominating from that position. In cEDH, tempo as an archetype really tends to play by sticking some kind of haymaker very early, and then dominating the game from there on each timing window. And so obviously this is where cards like Ranger Captain or Grand Abolisher play. This is where my Commander Kalieb would play. You can do a lot of tempo strats with Tymna, with Najila. But in terms of dovetailing back to these pieces like Archivist of Ogma, Smothering Tithe, you can also play these like tempo cards too. They don't have to be mid-range pieces. Archivist on turn 2 or turn 1 especially, even if you're just seeing like 2 or 3 cards off of it, and then it never draws anything else for the rest of the game, if you're sticking it early, that little burst in advantage might be what seals the deal for you going forward. And it gets even better when you pair it as your Tymna attacker. So, going back to the gentleman that brought up the Hope of Gearper analogy, which is a great one. Same deal with Archivist of Ogma. Turn 1 Archivist followed by turn 2 Tymna. You might have just gotten 3-4 cards off that. A piece like Smothering Tithe, it's kind of similar, but it's mana generation instead of card generation. If it sticks on the board for too long, it's a liability. Whoever brought up the cloning it, by the Ragashai decks and stuff like that, that's a big problem, and we don't want to play to that. But if you're sticking it early, then your opponents, play a Rhystic effect, but they're tapped out to do it because they're trying to catch you. You feed that Rhystic a couple of cards as you're setting up your win. Well, now all of a sudden, you flipped your opponent's Rhystic into essentially your own Burgi on the field, where if they draw a card, now they're making you mana. So it can be a literal, it can essentially be infinite mana. It also plays a lot harder if you're dropping Smothering Tithe, sit on it for 1 turn cycle, immediately follow it with like an Abolisher. Stack War erupts, people draw cards, do their things trying to stop the Abolisher. You generate mana underneath it, and that trap, you're trying to make people draw cards and shit like that. That trap of them giving you the mana, that's actually what enables you to hit harder on your combo turn, just because you're baiting your opponents into generating that resource for you. So yeah, that's kind of it. You want to play this kind of lower window. You probably will be going off when the Rhystic's on field, and that's actually okay. But flip it into a resource, you cut your opponents on their mana generation, and use it to your advantage. Does that make sense?
Yep, and that's why I always say it comes down to your preference. Do you want a card that gets you on board faster, which is what Knuckles is, because it gets you up a tempo, or do you want a card that gives you the support when you're popping off, and gives you the top end necessary to push harder? Depends on the inclusions you have, depends on the needs of your list, and depends on your preferred playstyle.
Well, they both can be used as tempo cards,
on
which is the purpose. It comes down to strategy. Both can be used as tempo cards. It just depends on how you're deploying them. That makes any sense.
So I want to go back to talking about like the original question was about like Archivist and Trouble in Pairs and people testing them and how they've been. I want to say that I've been on Archivist for like pretty much ever. I'm rarely off of Archivist for the same reason that was just mentioned, in that it is like a marginal card advantage piece that looks amazing in your openers. If you go turn 1 Archivist into turn 2 Tymna, you're seeing a lot of cards. I mean, not as much as like a Rhystic Study, but we're work on that same scale, right? 3 to 4 cards, 5 cards is like enough to piece together a win in this stack usually. So if you get those couple of cards, it's like usually you're looking at like a turn 3 win. And that's also why I'm such a big advocate of the Tymna plan, because turn 1 1-drop, turn 2 Tymna, draw a card, turn 3 play another guy, maybe a 2-drop or a 1-drop, and then turn 3 you swing out for 3 cards. Well, you've seen on that turn 3 you've seen 4 cards, maybe 5 cards depending on your start. Usually in post combat you can just put together a win from there. So I'm really big on playing these cards, but I will say on Trouble in Pairs specifically, I was testing it on Friday. I was in a stacks game. I went for a Tainted Pact end step because there was a Rule of Law out just to see what I could get. I flip over in the first couple of cards, Trouble in Pairs, and I passed over it. Even in the stacks game, even though it was early in the stacks game, and I knew it was gonna like keep going forever, it just didn't seem like it would be worth my time to cast. So that's probably not a good sign for it, but I'm gonna keep testing it a little bit to see.
Well, I mean, in stacks games in general, it's not going to do anything, right? Because stacks
Yeah, it's
games,
a rule law.
because trouble pairs, you want them to be casting multiple spells, and then you want them to be drawing multiple cards off of like Ristic. Well, in a stacks game, they're passing one spell, so that's not going to trigger it, and then they're paying for the Ristic because they can't cast anymore, so it's definitely not triggering.
Well, in this
Right.
game specifically, each person was incentivized to be attacking with all of their creatures every turn. There's one deck that had to attack every turn to get their stuff off. And then the other decks were also attacking, but it still wasn't worthwhile.
I mean, that's only one extra. Like, well, that's what I'm saying though. 4 mana for one extra card per turn rotation is not a good investment. Like, that's not good return. I am agreeing with you that that's a thing, but I would also say in a stacks game, Trouble in Pairs does not do well because it's not going to trigger more than once or twice every turn rotation. Whereas in a non-stacksy game, Trouble in Pairs averaged 8 for me. Like, drawing 8 cards in a turn rotation in a Mardu deck wins games. Like, one, and I'm sure you've seen that plenty. Where like if we're drawing 6 cards in a turn rotation or 8 cards in a turn rotation, that's 3 win attempts, like bare minimum, right?
Yeah, I mean that's why I want to keep testing it, just because like I was saying, 5-6 cards is usually enough to get you there. So
Yeah.
I want to keep
So,
testing it, but
but
we'll
the
see where
problem,
it goes.
If
the
you're trying
issue
to
I see with
turbo,
Trouble in Pairs is exactly the same thing I have with Knuckles. Is the double white pip is rough.
Yeah,
If this had the
it's
exact
killer.
same, yeah, if this had the exact same casting cost as Smothering Tithe, I don't even think it would be a question, right? Like it would be in the deck. It would have been already been in the deck. It's always going to be in the deck. But because that double white pip, it's really rough. And that's another reason why, like to me, I understand the Knuckles as a tempo. I don't want my tempo cards at this point to only produce mana unless the top end of that mana is practically me casting Omniscience, right? Like that's what to me, that's what Smothering Tithe is that if Smothering Tithe is out with 3 Ristic studies out, you can be looking at essentially having Omniscience at that point, right? Like it is
That's what
not.
we call it in my team. It's just
Yeah,
4 mana Omniscience.
legitimately, I cannot tell you how many times I've been like, well, I casted Smothering Tithe on turn 2. I am now on turn 10, mana wise, going into turn 3, which is bonkers. Which brings me to why I have this inclusion, which I'm not going to say I recommend to everybody, but talking about tempo, and I know that I'm giving a Jared an aneurysm right now just by showing this card on the screen. But this is an example that Jacob is saying about tempoing and what this card does. Putting Black Market out turn 1 or turn 2 means you're advancing your actual turn by a full turn every single time you hit your upkeep. So what
yeah,
that
this card
means
is busted.
is, say again.
This card is busted. Like Black Market is good. Like you turn 1 Dark Break this, next turn, like you have a Tymna attacker, you have the mana to cast a Tymna and stuff like that. Like it pays your life, but it's a really good card to just get you on board shit. On board you have 2 sacks for Dargo and you have a card. So like you just get so much out of it.
I have no need to elaborate any further than what he said. Does anyone have any questions about what he said? No. Now, I'm going to give
Cards,
Jared.
guys.
Would you like to elaborate on that?
I disagree. I think it's really good. I think you skip a turn. You get every single thing that you want. And like, what's your most common problem when you mox this deck? Sometimes you'll look at your hand and you'll just be like, I've done nothing but produce. Like I just have mana, you know. So that's like, I'm not saying to not run Smothering Tithe, but sometimes Smothering Tithe will produce you a handful of mana and then jack shit with, and then we talk about too like why are we who cares if someone clones your Smothering Tithe? The reason being because you do more with less faster. But like with Black Market, it's like, at the end of the day, you don't need that many treasures to win the game, But if you're just sitting there staring at a bunch of mana, that extra card draw and a creature on board, it just enables the entire deck. The whole deck just is available to play now, you know. And then one extra card, and that one extra card could be Culling the Weak, right? You know, that's more mana than you would have gotten in one turn of Smothering Tithe if everybody drew one card. Or it could be a win con. It could be a bunch of shit, and it's 3 mana, and it's easier to cast. I think it's. I'm not saying it's amazing, but I feel like the fact that it hasn't been really thoroughly tested in this deck yet is kind of crazy. That shit needs to be tested.
I think
I
that
want to push back a little bit on that Smothering Tithe comment, just in that we do again, and this is why again I'm a big advocate of the Tymna plan. Our mana is cards. We do have a draw engine in the zone. A Smothering Tithe and a bunch of creatures and a bunch of 1-drop shitters out means that on the turn when you untap, you can just play Tymna and draw 3 cards, and
Yeah,
then
until what
you
turn
have
though?
enough mana to play all
The
that.
boards get so clogged. How many attackers are you getting through without evasion of some sort? Like, are you running Delny to get all these attackers through all the time on turn 3 or 4 in these slop games? Like, how are you getting
And
all
even
these
that
attackers?
doesn't do it. With all these Thrasioses
I
and shit like
I
that,
don't know.
like
I play in a very Thrasios Kinnan heavy meta, and none of those guys are trading anything. Like, you just present them with a trade, and they don't do it because they're greedy. Even
But,
in
like,
bigger tournaments, I just
I
throw
don't
it
even
at
have the
trades.
option to trade all the time. We're trading little 1/1s into 2/2s sometimes, you know? Like, I know if you run bigger
And then
creatures,
I was just
sure,
saying,
but
for the slop games, it's Brog Ishai and stuff. They don't have creatures on board. Always an open attack. You're going to get 1 to 2 cards at least. If
well,
you're lucky, you'll
like,
get 3.
every blue deck is playing the
Tournament,
slop now. Like, the Kinnan I played last week had 3 Rhystic Studies on the fucking board. It's like, it's not just Rogish
well,
side.
yeah, that's what I'm saying. But that's what I'm saying. These slop decks aren't putting creatures on the board. So if you're really worried about these slop games and getting cards in these slop games, like, they're open attacks. People are just open attacks. They're not putting creatures out. But if you're playing into creature heavy metas, like, sure, maybe you have to make a conceit of like, oh, maybe I should prioritize a Bowmasters, or maybe I should put Mayhem Devil in my deck. But like, unless you guys are somehow seeing 1 million more creatures on board than I'm seeing locally all the time, even though I play into Thrasios and Kinnan, I always have at least 1 Tymna attack open, if not 2, if not 3, on turn 3 and turn 4. I don't think I've
To
rarely
further
am
that,
ever
though,
in a game.
Black Market also produces you a 3/2 Tymna attacker. Just saying.
I like the idea of Black Market. I was just detached from Black Market connections completely. I was just saying, like,
also,
one of the reasons
by
I'm
the
a
way,
big Tymna advocate is mana equals cards.
Oh, I fuck with Tymna.
Black Market is a changeling, so it makes treasures with Magda. But you've never done that before.
Oh shit,
I,
that's interesting.
I was just gonna say the one thing I was gonna say about Black Market was that I actually kind of like it conceptually in the place of Trouble in Pairs, if Trouble in Pairs is being considered.
now, while we're all, what's it called? Well, as we're all talking about black market connections in his theory, before he actually absolutely pops a blood vessel, Jared, I'm gonna give you 30 seconds to tell us why you hate this card.
Okay. We have time to play the card now. So if you like the card, play the card. It's just antithetical to how I like to play this game. I don't like playing cards where if I'm drug deploying it, it's not having any sort of immediate impact. I don't want to have to wait a turn in order to get back to my turn, in order for it to generate value. If I wanted to tap out for a 3-mana thing and then wait until it gets back to my turn before I can do things, then I'd just play Rhystic Study and I'd play blue. That's it.
Okay. I want to also say that I'm gonna validate what Jared's saying, that he is right. Putting this out on like turn 2 or 3, putting it out past turn 3 is not favorable. But I could say the same thing about Archivist, and I could say the same thing about many of the cards that we have in our deck. That like
You can't
I,
because it's 2 mana. That's the difference. Like if it costs more than 2 mana, I don't want to wait for it to get back to my turn. The Archivist has Flash, which also can be very relevant as well. I also think that Archivist on average is going to generate you more value in the early turns than this card because it's more castable on turn 1, and this card is not. Like, this is a 3-mana card that has no immediate impact. Like, I think that we just don't want the time to do that. We don't want to tap out for a 3-mana engine and then pray it gets back to our turn when we don't have free interaction to stop the people that are still very much trying to go fast. Like, I just don't think we're in the place to play this card, and I think it's completely unnecessary. The second point I'll say, this is the last thing I'll say about it, is ultimately, I don't feel like I have a cards problem in this deck because it has such a high density of payoffs. I'm also capitalizing on Necro a lot more. I think the deck, based on how I like to mulligan for it, as long as I can generate mana, I can win. If I can have enough mana, I play enough silence effects, I play enough uncounterable ways to put them into play. I'm confident that I'll be able to get there. I just need mana, and I need mana now, not next turn. I need it immediately because I need to develop my board state for Tymna, or else I could just die. That is a little different now because people are starting to, be a little bit more responsible early. I could see swapping Knuckles for Smothering Tithe. Absolutely, I'm still looking at Knuckles' mana cost, that which was brought up. But I'm not gonna do it for a card like Black Market Connections because the 3 mana suite or the 3 mana spell suite is already something we're shaving off in order to capitalize on the polar design necessary for the deck to function at its best, in my opinion. And there's so many 3 mana cards I would play over this card. But that's like my full. If you guys want like my full spiel on it, I just don't like. It has too many negatives. It has too many downsides, and it's just too slow. It's not doing enough for what it costs, for what it does. If it were a creature, that would be different too. One other important thing about archivists and things that wasn't mentioned yet is that
I
they're
could have sworn
also
that was your
creatures
last.
to
That
sack
was your
to
last
our
point.
things. What?
I'm giving you shit, dude. I'm giving you shit.
I know. Oh, sorry. Yeah. No, that was a point I was gonna say a lot earlier about the archivist conversation or the value engine conversation. Is that they're also creatures, which is a really big deal. So they're not just cards; they're also mana. For Dargo and for Calling the Weak and Diabolic Intent. Now I'm done.
Okay.
But hear me out. You darker it, you cast this, you Simeon Spirit Guide, you Final Fortune, boom, dude. You got the shit, dude. Basically.
My biggest thing about this card right now is not only does it produce literally every resource we could ever want in this deck. We're sitting here saying we want creatures on the board to sack. Check. We want treasures to create and get white or white pips. Check. We want extra card draw. Check. We want Tymna attackers. Check. We want Pyre of Heroes targets. Check. And again, you don't and I do understand that it comes down and it's I understand that it comes down and it doesn't give you anything immediately. I get that. I understand that. We are not in a position right now, in my opinion, to where we can be sitting back on like different things. I do agree, however, that being
Wait,
on
can the person that's mute yourself that has the person in the background, please?
it's Jace, that's you, bud. Thanks. Uh, here's the thing. I will say, and to his point, having a 2-drop that's gonna give you value, huge. That's great. I love that. I do. If Black Market Connections was a 2-drop, I don't even think we'd be having this conversation. It would already be in the deck. But we don't have that. And I do think it's castable early enough because to me, the goal of this deck as far as like what turn do I want to get to is always getting to turn 4. Like if I can get to turn 4, I'm putting up win attempts, it's not even a question. Right? That's always been this deck, even at the slowest. Now, again, when I used to run this deck with no Adnaz, no Necro, right, and a fuck ton of 3-drops. Like it was 3-drop tribal in my deck. Turn 4 was always still the boiling point. Turn 4 always meant I was gonna push for a win, no matter what. Or if I didn't push for a win on turn 4, it wasn't because I couldn't. It's because I just didn't, because I chose not to, because the window wasn't open to do it. Now,
I think
go ahead.
Gardner, like I'm a turbo guy. I played that card in Jund Dargo. I know it's obviously different, but like I think like it does everything, dude. Like you don't have to spend. You have all those like with the tempo thing. One card is getting you 3 different resources. Getting you a card, is getting you a creature, is getting you a treasure, and is getting you a card. out of one card. And I understand you have to wait a turn, but you're getting three things and you only had to use one card for it. And it's every turn. And it's modal. Right? So it's like if you don't even like it literally facilitates literally every plan, one card. Right? You have one card that gets you your creature that you can facilitate your Tymna plan. You can facilitate your Dargo plan because you have two sacks. It literally just does everything. And obviously you have to wait a turn for it. But I think we're being greedy here. Like it does a fucking lot. It literally does everything our deck wants us to do. And at any point in any game plan that we're having, we can use the treasure, we can use the creature, and we can use the extra card. Even if I know it takes an extra turn, but it's like so does Tithe. So does like a bunch of shit in our card, a deck.
Right. So a couple things there. I don't believe it's needed. Yes, it does give us all the things that we could want. The question is, do I need a card like that with the current structure that I've built for myself? If I weren't playing Pyre, I would consider it a lot more heavily. If I weren't playing, um, let's see, if I weren't playing Rector, I would definitely consider it more too. Because I already have enough of these cards that kind of give me everything I want for how I'm playing the deck. I think I don't need a card like that. I don't need a card where I must wait a turn in order to get the things. Yeah, I understand if you power it out early, it's great. You can afford to you afford to take a turn off and you get all the resources back in spades. You get a big return on investment. I totally get that. The question is, do I need a piece like that? And do I prefer pieces that have the option of waiting a turn or can give me immediate value now? Yes, and I already play those cards. I just don't think a card like this is necessary, given the demands that I feel I'm asking for the deck, if that makes sense. But I do have a spare value slot. Archivist is taking up that slot. I would consider giving this a shot for sure. I just don't like that past turn, maybe two. I think this card is terrible. And the other cards I'm running in a similar slot are good overall. I mean, hell, even Archivist can be, if you have plenty of mana, a 2 mana thing to sack to a Calling the Weak. Like, that's sort of my thing about it. It's not that I think it's terrible, atrocious, and completely unplayable. It's just a little bit antithetical to how I have my current construction and what I'm trying to accomplish right now. But that could change. I found it bad in the past, but again, things can always change. So we'll see what happens.
I do find it very funny that within the same sentence, I think the card is terrible, but I'm not saying that it's terrible. Then I don't really know what you're trying to say.
Just because I think something to be true doesn't mean it's true. That's sort of like the science, like me. Like I could think a card is terrible. That doesn't mean it actually is. I don't claim to
There is
to,
room for error.
any type of truth or whatever.
There, that's fair.
Of note, we do have a question in the text chat from Revving Dragon.
Oh my god, I need to get really a lot better about like looking at these.
I was waiting for a lull in the conversation.
I appreciate you, Phil, so much. You're an angel. A different Mardu deck, that being Dada. How does Tymna Dargo strategy differ from her? One, it wins games.
Yeah, way
Two,
different, bro.
damn, I went there.
It's not even the same.
Dada is it's a breach deck. It's a turbo breach deck. That's what it does. That's what it's meant to do. It's hyper focused on doing the turbo breach thing. It's very efficient at doing the turbo breach thing, but that is all it does is the turbo breach thing. And it's fragile. So that's why Tymna Dargo has more pivot plans, more combo lines, more it's a battery like Dada, but it's a different type of way to farm. Like Dada can't farm.
Yeah, like hear me out. Like Tymna Dargo, you can literally like you can pick up the deck and you can do whatever the fuck you want. Like you can win in like 30 different ways. In Dahada, you're locked into the breach shit. Like you're not going to be able to use your Dargo and then I don't know make a bunch of citadels and then sack. Like you can do whatever you want with Tymna Dargo. You have a lot more lines, and as you get more into the deck, you can literally just do whatever you want. Like your hands are just so good. With Dahada, you're locked into casting your 4 mana planeswalker that dies to a fierce guardianship. So you just have way more avenues.
Pivot ability.
I will say as a expansion of what he just said, if you look at the last year and a half, 2 years of history with this deck, there have been effectively 3 archetypes for Dargo Tymna alone. You have the Hyper Turbo, you have the Tymna Grind Focus, and you have the in-between of those two. All of which have converted at high rates. So Dargo Tymna has the ability to be like, I can play the style of game I want to play, and within the context of Dargo Tymna's game plans, play my strategy. HGH, for instance, and notably, the first person to really push this was Kyle, where it's a Tymna deck with a Dargo finish. I don't know if HGH is that if that's an accurate description of what your deck is like, but I know Kyle's that's the way
I
it
mean,
is.
that's how I play it at least.
Yeah, so it's not a Dargo Tymna deck, it's a Tymna Dargo deck, right? Like, uh, or like for instance, if you have any experience with a Krark Thrasios deck, there's a Krark Thrasios deck, and there's a Thrasios Krark deck where it's actually a Thrasios deck, but Krark just happens to be there too.
For a
Where
finisher, yeah.
yeah, for the finisher, Dargo Tymna has had nearly equal success with the Dargo Tymna plan and the Tymna Dargo plan, if that makes any sense to what I'm trying to say here.
There is a wide spectrum between the two that, of course, still has that success as well.
Yeah, me casting Tymna is like casting Silas. Like I'd rather cast Silas in my Rockside deck than cast Tymna in my Dargo deck.
Yeah, and another thing
And
is,
I'm the
I will
opposite.
say on my experience, I have played Dada a little bit before giving it a shot. It feels like you're all locked in all in one. The pivotability I've had with this deck compared to other decks, oh, we're grinding. Someone has this, I need to wait a turn. Feels so much easier to fill the time as well. And then just on a dime, you can say, well, it's time to go. Oh, someone went for a win. Here, table, let me silence to help. Okay, here's, you can do this in any Mardu deck, but here's my Nas. But it feels like it's easier to generate the resources from any position to do
So
stuff.
remember how I said earlier, where I said that the closest thing in the top decks in the meta was to blue farm is us? That's why. Crown and Tymna is I have a turbo plan. I will grind with Tymna plan. Okay, time to explode for the win. Explode for the win. That's Dargo Tymna in a nutshell. We just do it without blue, and we're more based and not soulless. I won't elaborate further. Now, as far as like and also pivotability, you see my considering list is 107 cards. Every single card in this 107 has been tested extensively or played in tournaments by me or someone in this Discord extensively. Like that's just the way it is. Of note, wait turn for black market connections 3/2 changeling that makes still is summoning sick, so it isn't even a Tim attacker after you wait. Agreed, Astral, but I will tell you the whole purpose of black market connections or what I want to be doing with that card in general, it's the first two things. It's one, yes, sacrifice fodder is a good point, and two, it's tempoing me into the the next turn because the treasure is a land drop and the draw a card is essentially your draw for turn. My turn two, whenever I played that black market connections, the next turn is a turn ahead of everybody else. I'm skipping turn orders. Is essentially what I'm trying to do with black market connections. That's the idea behind it. But again, I do understand that like, well, I don't want to wait a whole turn rotation to get things done. I get that. But my problem is not really do like black market connections to me on turn two is better than Archivist on turn two. I think Black Market Connections on turn three is better than Archivist on turn three. Like I'm just using that as an example, not as like the one for one swap comparison. But it also brings me to why I like for instance, Rakdos for a lot of players in their playstyle, right? I think that cards like that allow you to just say, I'm going to see more cards earlier than other people. And I think that there's cards like that, that generate more things arbitrarily than other decks can do. For example, I know a lot of you guys have been on Mem Knight, for instance. Mem Knight is a 0-drop 1/1, so it's an Tymna attacker. It's an artifact for Opal in a pinch. It's a sack fodder for Dargo in a pinch. That's free. It's
Infernal Plunge Culling the Week.
Correct. It's Infernal Plunge and Culling the Week a turn earlier. As
Card is
opposed
fucking nuts, by the way.
So a lot of people are playing this card, right? A lot of people are saying this is a really good card, and I think it needs to be tested. I would agree, but that's one of the reasons why people are liking it, right? I just named you 3 reasons why it skips you ahead a turn because it's a resource that's immediate, as opposed or a resource that you're cheating out per se, right? And why I think Mem Knight is good is because it does those things. Black Market Connections does it in a different way, right? Like it gives you the Tymna attack on turn 2 for, and again, a lot of situational things. And I think that it's also uh uh oh, I'm gonna say right now why we pick Mem Knight over Rog. Because 1, Mem Knight is a 1/1, so it can actually be a Tymna attacker, and 2, I'm not playing that fucking kobold ever for any reason. I don't care if I don't care. I'm not playing that kobold. That's just me being a petty little bitch, but I'm okay with that, and I've accepted that. So there is that
The
too.
fact that it's a 1/1 is really important.
It's
Just
extremely important. Yeah, I mean, okay. There is a deck out there right now, a version of Tymna Dargo, where they are playing every 0-drop creature that they can to play Dargo turn 1 or turn 2 immediately, and it's chock full of cards that are. Jacob, are you still in here at all? You are. Do you have that list, or what's his name? Alex's list, right?
it's Alex Leanne's list. It's pretty cool. I gotta head out, by the way, but this was great, guys.
Do you actually
I'll
have a
see
link for
y'all
that?
later.
I have it, but I can't really link it at the moment just because I'm out
See ya.
Have a good
hiking.
one, baby.
See ya.
But it's in our chat though, Kellen. If you just
Okay. I'll just look through the media essentially or links.
yeah.
Okay. We go here. We go.
A comment while he's looking, guys. So all of these pieces, like Black Market Connections, Archivist of Ogma, this is kind of an eternal debate in Mardu, among Mardu Brewing, and it always happens when we kind of hit a brick wall to a certain extent with the meta. Like we're like, what the hell do we do? There isn't really an objective truth to any of these cards. They're all fine. It's just kind of like, where do you want your edge to be? And if you find it with one of these things, that's great. But we're kind of in some ways just waiting for a next big breakthrough or for a meta change so that we can have kind of a concrete direction of where to go. But this discussion always happens. Like it's I think I've been through it like 5 times over the years.
At the end of the day,
It's
like none of the
healthy
shit
to
like
have.
actually really matters. Like if you know your deck and you know what to play and how to play, right? Like I think these discussions are really good for pros and cons. But at the end of the day, bro, like it doesn't matter what you play. Like if you're confident with your list and you're able to push through whatever, do what you want. But obviously, if you want feedback for what's the pros and cons for it, I think these are where the conversations are for. Because I'm still going to play my Claim the Firstborn, and I'll put a cruel ultimatum in there somehow.
Yeah, I completely agree.
Yeah, I mean, guys.
There's a lot of pilot preference that goes into these things as well.
Yeah.
This is
I mean,
just to get information out there, these sessions, and get ideas from each other. So we can all, who knows, someone may pick up something, hey, this sounds like a good idea. They try it, well, it doesn't work with the way I play, but it was a good recommendation.
Okay,
We do that in
like
this Discord all the time.
for
Yep.
reference, guys, here are cards that were I was told when I first started playing this deck, or in the years of playing this deck, where it's been like, I don't think that's a good card to run, or you shouldn't run that card. Failure, Yawgmoth, Tithe, Imperial Recruiter. When I first got into this deck, Recruiter of the Guard was this slot. I was like, that doesn't make any sense. Was told that that's wrong. Okay. Boromir was a staple for a little bit. Delny was a don't do that. It's too slow kind of card.
Vexing Bobble.
Vexing. I never advocated for Vexing Bobble.
I
Season
know you
Spotlight.
still don't.
Correct. I don't. I mean, honestly, I'm actually more okay with it now than
Than you
that was
were when
before.
it first was discussed. Yeah.
Yeah,
It's
I'm
so
more
good.
okay with it now. Another card that I was told big no, don't do that. Dualcaster Mage has won me plenty of games. I'm just saying, Loris was another one. Like, I'm just saying, do what is best for you within the context of I can always say like, hey, I think card quality on that was great, or we can say like card quality on what you're trying to do is maybe there's better options, but I get what you're trying to do, but you test it. That's how my response is for everything. So cards that like, especially going in like again to round this out and kind of call it, like cards that I think that need to be looked at, tested, and considered, and really like, hey man, like think about it a little bit. I do think the Reanimator package is something you should look at. I think that peer and ad nauseam and stuff like that are harder to resolve than ever, especially because SWATs are now more prevalent than ever. I think SWATs are at a premium right now where everyone's starting to run as many SWATs as humanly possible, or misdirections and stuff like that. Like that's absolutely a thing, which also gives us this like Jolly Balloon Man can be swatted. That's a problem, right? That's not good.
Redirect Lightning too.
Yeah,
Yep.
redirect lightning. Yeah, I mean every single fucking redirect is happening right now. I think Jolly Balloon Man is still good enough to run because again, like final parting just wins the game at that point. But I also think Cursed Mirror is something that you should be really considering. And if you're on Cursed Mirror, that also means probably Magda is something you should probably be back on if you're not on Magda. I currently am not on Magda, but like those are considerations to have. I said last week, or not last week, last time we had Town Hall, if you're not running Mayhem Devil,
Think about it.
I think you should think about it. I think it's good enough to where there are games where the longer the game goes on, but I don't want my stuff cloned. You can win through a mayhem that's been cloned. I promise. Like it's a thing. I promise. Um, I think that Memnite, as was mentioned, I need to find a cut for Memnite. I think it's good enough to run. I think Nova Cleric was something I mentioned the last time too. Every game I've seen Nova Cleric, it's done more than what I expected it to do because it prevented people from playing Ristics, which was good enough in itself for me to justify it. I just need to find. I'm just trying to find too many cuts right now and too many spots that matter. I think that Tithe should be run. That it's good enough for everyone else in the world. And I'm telling you, every time I've seen a Tithe across from me playing Dargo, I wish I had that Tithe. I probably would have won if I did. I also think that in the Midnight slot, if you're like, I don't really think Midnight does enough for what I want to do, I'm testing Net Instant Neonate right now, and
Spicy.
I'm going to tell you, it is way better than I expected it to be. This card has been absolutely insane for things like turn one menacing attacker for Tymna. Check. The biggest actual thing, like Ka and I had talked about this earlier, so we were talking about Lightning Axe, we were talking about Faithless Looting. Actually, I really, Clark Clan Shaman. For those of you who have not been looking at that text, that's a very easy way to just be like, you know what? We're clearing the board right now. Like, that's normally not my thing and not normally something I would like to do, but I think that it's undeniably like testable. Like you have to sit there and go, well, clearing the board for a resource I already am doing sacks for Dargo kind of seems gas. Right? Because you can respond over the top of the activation of sacrificing an artifact to sacrifice another artifact. It's a one-time thing that will work, but it will do the thing that you're asking it to do. Like board wiping is definitely something that is valuable. HGH, is that why you're posting that?
I've
Like we
played
were
this
talking about
card.
one drops, and it was an interesting one drop that I've come across recently, where it's like I think it fits decently into the plans. Where it's like for my Tymna centric plan, it's like, oh well, if the Cradle deck goes off to a crazy start and gets a bunch of 1/1s, is willing to just chump block my Tymna or whatever, and now I can just blow up one, kill all the X1s, get rid of the Espers, the cloned Espers, the Cradle fuel, and then get my draws.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I think
I've
killing
played
off
this card.
all the one drops from the one toughness things is pretty cool. Plus, we're one of the only decks that actually benefits from our ones dying, except for Ragavan. And like it doesn't even kill Mardu Devotee, which is hilarious to me.
Yeah.
What was I gonna say? Yeah, but Insolent Neonate, the actual power of Insolent Neonate, I've noticed in my goldfishing, is I can keep a top deck tutor with Necro now. Like, that's really good. And for those of you who are really like into the Necro game, like, and trust me, Necro is, and oh wait, we're recording this. I'm not allowed to say micros right. Never mind. So Necro's cool, but
Clip that.
uh, being able to rip Necro for like 13, 14 and seeing a top deck tutor and sitting there saying, damn, I can't even use this card anymore because I won't see it for a whole nother turn cycle is no longer a problem. Insolent Neonate fixes that problem for you. Also, Insolent Neonate fixes I need to crack my top deck tutor now and win. It fixes that problem. And I said earlier, Insolent Neonate also combos with Ruthless Technomancer. The combo goes, you start your Ruthless Technomancer line with Jolly Balloon Man. Let's say it's second main phase, and you had Ruthless Technomancer in your hand, and then you draw it off of Jolly Balloon Man off of Tymna draw. Like, well, I can't use this. Well, now you can sit there and go, present loop, discard a card, draw a card off Insolent Neonate, reanimate Insolent Neonate, rinse and repeat process until Savine's Reclamation and Underworld Breach are in the yard, right? Cast Savine's Reclamation. Win the game. That's not an insane thing to say or do. It just gives us more. Again, not going to use the word agency because Jacob's here, but it gives us more options for things like that. Memnite doesn't really do anything like that. It just gives us a really good opportunity to capitalize on other things early. I think that Memnite probably should again still be in, but I think Insolent Neonate also sacrifices towards a Dargo. The other one that I was testing as well was right here, Voldarian Epicure. I think if you're not on the Insolent Neonate and you're still like, well, I still want to drop that kind of does more things than that. This does exactly what you would want and also loops with Technomancer for a win. That's kind of cool, right? But yeah, I would definitely consider that. I
You
am
should
going to cut.
also
Go
probably
ahead.
explain what Neonate does for Reanimator.
Oh, yeah. Since I'm on the whole Neonate Reanimator plan, what happens when I draw my Razaketh? Now, normally, we would sit there and go, well, fuck. I guess I'm not doing the thing. Or when do I draw my Rakdos? I don't really. I have a Reanimate in my hand, and I have a Rakdos in my hand. And an Instant Neonate on the field. Put it in the graveyard. We are literally turning into Tymna Jeskai. I love it.
I
Also,
know.
with
I
these
was
one
waiting
drop
for it.
guys,
Thank you, whoever said that.
with these
So,
one drops, they're tutorable, right? So a lot of these things where like a lot of the cards you see here, it's better when you can tutor for like the Ranger Captain obviously gets the cards, so you'll be seeing these cards more often. And when you have that Ranger Captain, like the good thing about this deck, you have a good one drop suite. So your Ranger Captain is like obviously his protection, but it literally gets you cards that help you win the game, right? Like your DRC, this Outslate, whatever the fuck, right? These cards, your one drops actively help you win. So like the one drops are really important in my opinion.
so
Yo, that's actually kind of nuts. I didn't even think about that. If you had like 5 mana and like a
mhm.
reanimate and then a big creature in hand, and you had a Ranger Captain, you
Yep.
could go Ranger Captain, get Neonate, crack Ranger Captain, pop the Neonate to put your big boy in the yard, and then you have a protected Reanimator line.
These
Yeah.
guys, by the way, just some context, they kind of compete with a piece like Faithless Looting, which is more digging
yeah.
and it plays better with the Entombs. But then the
Yeah.
Voldaren, like the little one drops, they play better with Tymna. They're searchable with Ranger, and this is why like TJ usually, so Shiver and all his exploration, this is why he leaned towards those guys versus Faithless. But if you're more deep on just pure entombing stuff, Faithless ends up playing better. So just
Yeah. We
however you
also
guys
talked
want to
about
do it.
lightning axe
That's
too.
the
If
same.
you
Fine with
wanted
that on this deck.
if you wanted that slot to be removable, it could also be lightning axe, and then it's instant speed too.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's
On
another
top
lightning
of
good one.
that,
There
we
are
have
options.
Dargo as well, so there's more overlap when you're playing the creatures.
Right.
Here.
The
Yeah.
sack for Dargo is also like extremely relevant.
Yep. 100%.
Yep.
I'm just saying, so far
And
in
Menace,
the play
dude,
pattern-
Menace is crazy. Sorry.
No, I mean, you're not wrong. It has evasion. That's like that's relevant. That's extremely relevant. Because I can't tell you how many times I've had like, for instance, an impulsive pilfer on the field, and it's like, well, they have a Thrasios. That's all they have. Like, oh, I guess I'm not getting in? Question mark, because they're not going to let me, right? Even when they say, well, he wants the treasure. Nah, give him the treasure. I have counter spells. Like, okay, well, card draw is important. It's like like Shambling Ghast has pseudo evasion because you go like, I'm gonna attack with Shambling Ghast. Well, then I will block with it. Great, I'll give it a 1/1 and kill your kid, and then how about that? Like, don't do it. Instant neonate, you don't have the they have to commit to it, or they can't use their mana dorks or whatever, right? So I think it's absolutely worth testing. The last thing I want to go over before I think we should wrap this up is the comment earlier that was kind of a joke, but I'm not joking, is Hexing Sculpture. This clap 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 is not clap 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 a silence clap 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 effect. It is not.
Not at
It is
all.
good. It gives us some it gives us some protection from things. But I'm telling you right now, every game I have seen this card hit the field, that person lost the game because they thought they
Yep.
were safe. They are not. So understand if you're going to play this, and understand if you are playing this. I am not saying don't play Hexing Squelcher. I'm not saying that you're bad for choosing to play Hexing Squelcher. What I am telling you is you cannot treat this card as if it's a Grand Abolisher, because it's not.
Bro, Grand Abolisher isn't even safe, dog. Like with all the channel effects and stuff. Like
I
you gotta be
agree with you.
Yeah, you gotta be safe with Grand Abolisher. With this spell, it's like you feel safe, and it's like I'll draw Ristic spells, but then it's like, bro, like I went so I me personally, I went through this like stupid shredder card with a transmute. I was transmuting for this card because I was like, I want to go for an uncounterable line. I transmute, I get the Hexagon Sculpture, did all this crazy shit. It was amazing. Cast a spell. I'm storming. I'm having a great time. The spell that mattered got commandeered, and I was like, guess what? This doesn't fucking stop commandeering, and I lost. So every
So
time I resolved Hexing Sculpture, I pretty much lost.
Same.
so not to compound on what he said, because I think that me just giving you anecdotal evidence is not authentically well researched. But to just contradict myself, I had a game just a couple days ago where every single person at the game had a Hexing Squelcher effect and a Consecrated Sphinx. I still won the game. How does 3 different blue players with Consecrated Sphinx and Rhystic Studies and Hexing Squelcher effects lose to the guy in 4th seat?
Well, you're Hebrew, so you know
No,
I don't know what you want from us,
no,
dude. Like you're goated.
it's
What do you
because
want?
it's
Damn.
because they got their shit bounced. That's what it was. They got like they, they're just eventually at the end they're like, okay, use my bounce spell that can't be countered because the Hexing Squelcher that so you cancel each other out. Bounce the Hexing Squelchers, multiple of them. Great. Now we're all unlocked. Good to go. Like, so Mike's
I will.
experience. Go ahead, HH.
I was just say I'm a big fan of Squelcher, but even that, like, and all of my anecdotal experiences, how Hexing Squelcher being great. Like, I mean, it's the sole reason I made it to top 16 at the 10K, and it's won me quite a few games. and even I'm still considering it a cuttable slot. So
It is a flex slot. It is not a must. It is good, but it also has weaknesses you do have to acknowledge.
Yeah, but the moral of the story here.
In
just
my
be careful.
opinion, I'm gonna go harder. I think this card is actually worse than Defense Grid.
Yeah,
I
same.
understand why it is good, but I think it's just I think the reason why it's so hyped is because it's an is it card. You know, it pairs very well when you have counter spells to pair with it, because then your
Yep.
thing, you know, you can counter your opponent's things, but they can't counter yours. I think for us, Revel in Silence, Defense Grid, Myrel, in the long term will be stronger. But I mean, certainly this is a playable effect. Just not
I
God.
I agree with you there because I
Aw.
Defense Grid and what was the other one? Conqueror's Flail in its place.
Yeah.
Okay.
I will say Vexing Bubble and Hexing Sculpture is really good though.
Yeah.
Vexing Squad. Yeah, I mean, yeah,
Hexing Squelch.
That's a given. Yeah.
but I actually think it's really funny that you mentioned that, Mike. Like, my biggest problem right now is I'm trying to find things for redirect lightning because the channel effects is like the one thing that's just gonna cook us. Like, it's just gonna cook us at any point, and everyone runs every channel effect they possibly can, except for Touch the Spirit Realm, and even then, most people do. At least that I've seen. So I'm trying to find slots for Memnite and uh redirect lightning. And at this
too.
point, probably Archivist. Um, but if I don't like how Block Market Connection does, then that's one. That's a pretty easy slot right there. If I don't like it, and then the other one, who I don't know, but I think Revel in Silence is better. I agree with Jacob on that. Like, I think Revel, like the ability to just say no to everything, and I mean everything except for channel, lowers your probability of being interacted with by considerable amounts. Um, I, I, you know, it's actually kind of funny though. If we get Conqueror's Flail, and we find a
It's
way to
not a bad idea. Whoever said that, it's really not crazy.
The
In
problem,
our
Yeah, I brought it
creature,
up. I
in
was
our
just thinking
26,
about it.
27 creature deck. Yeah.
Well, it was just a matter of like we were talking about it, and I was like, well, Sculpture is cuttable. Like I would rather just play another silence effect in its place. And I'm like, I much prefer hard silences over like D-Grid, and like especially since like if you get screwed over, like someone stops your win somehow, and then you have to pass with the D-Grid in play, well then you're 100% losing. But like if you just get out a flail, and you like someone stops you, at least you're not throwing the game. But then there's also synergy with like Engineer, a few other things that we play for Conqueror's Flail. It's a good idea. It was just something that popped into my mind earlier today.
Yep, I think
I mean,
it's definitely worth playing with.
the only problem I have is that it's the 4 mana. But then I thought to myself, well, we're talking about Myrel too, right?
Myrel, yeah. I was gonna say it's
Yeah, so
equivalent to
like,
Myrel. That's why I was suggesting it as well.
Well, the thing about this Conqueror spell that it doesn't just die to counter spells; it also dies to bounce spells, right? Like, I mean, obviously you have more mana, you just equip something else, but it's like there's that to consider with Conqueror spell. Like with white, I feel like it's way too weak. Like that's like a Rakdos card that you need because you don't have anything else. That's
That's
my
what I said.
opinion. I
It
think
was
you have
more
too
on
many white
like
silence.
no, I was gonna say I wouldn't play it in place of like an actual factual like abolisher effect. I was just thinking on like I'm already down the line of like all the way down on the creature silence effects of or the abolisher effect rather all the way down to my rel I'm going to be playing now. So like if I want to reach even deeper into that bag, I was trying to think of like the next thing to play that is just a hard abolisher effect.
So just to kind of dovetail a little bit off that, I'm just going to put some points out generally about the meta going forward, and then Tymna Dargo specifically. So like, because, and this is just something for everybody. I don't have any, you know, I'm very new to this deck. I know a lot of Mardu in general, but you know, so take that. Anyways, so like meta going forward, I think Hebrews' points about Jeskai coming in and being a new force are very, very important. And I think what we're actually going to see is that there's a lot of niche competition among the other the various mid-range decks, and they're going to be grappling with this Ragashai slop actually in a lot of ways harder than we are. Because you got to remember, it's a bigger mid-range deck, and in some ways it kind of displaces things like Kinnan. It displaces Esper. It displaces mid-range Tymna. And I think you're going to see a lot of pilots actually moving from, like, I don't know about percentage-wise, but a good chunk of people kind of moving off some of these decks for Jeskai. So there's going to be a lot of niche competition over there, and it's going to be very weird. We're going to see a lot more interaction spells going forward that are hitting creatures. I think we're going to see, like people have been saying, a lot more redirection effects. Just be cognizant of that shit. And then also for how these meta pressures are going to shape Tymna Dargo, this deck is on people's radars as a big, scary storm deck. And I think you guys should expect to see yourselves being fearmongered quite a lot going forward. So start thinking about these different strategies. I think the going ham on the Abolisher effects is a super fucking good idea. Conqueror's Flail, all that fits into there. I think we're also going to start seeing a lot of our tutors and rituals getting countered, because that's kind of the point of exposure, if you will.
Yeah. Also, like, just make sure you guys know, like, when you're playing the deck, obviously just understand where your weaknesses are and where your weak points are, like, when you're facing these lists. And really quick, Hebrew, I don't know if you've seen, there's this new archetype coming out for kind of like ROG. It's called like Battery. I know that Colin's playing it, and I know that Varex is playing it, whatever. And it's basically, I'll send you some list. The idea is just having like these batteries, and you just keep pushing. And I've seen it, and they just literally just keep pushing and pushing and pushing using batteries like Keurig, like for mana, and obviously Bergie we're already doing. But it's like Storm Kiln, shit like that, and basically just being able to just. I'll send you a list, but it's really really insane, and it's be able to push through these slot metas. And I wonder if we can implement that somehow in Mardu.
So are you saying battery in a sense of you're able to cheat in more mana and cheat in more things, and you're like you said, Keurig cheats out black mana, and then Bergie gives you just red mana all the time?
Yeah, but they're doing stuff where it's like they're making a bunch of fucking but like the spells that they're casting essentially, I'll send it to you. It's really really interesting. I know we have the burnt offering and shit, and I've been doing a little bit with Quark Tymna basically, and it's basically just being able to make a bunch of fucking mana and just keep on pushing and pushing turn two. Like they're fucking jamming turn two with a bunch of mana and a bunch of cards. Like I stopped this dude 3 times and he pushed 3 times in a row. Varix did on his battery Rog Thrasios list.
I very much please send me that list. This is kind of, I think we're saying the same thing with the Tithe because everyone has Ristics. That's our version of it right now. But if we have better options and a better availability to do that, like I'm okay to start like looking into that. I mean, and again, you know me, I'm all about the test. So like, let's test shit. Let's figure that out. Send me a list of what you're talking about, and let's see how we can kind of implement that. Um, does that mean that we have to go on stuff like Keurig and stuff like that for an upper Adnaz mana? I don't know. Like, is there better utilization of our resources for life for mana? I don't know. But I definitely want to take a look at that, and I think that we can take a look at that for our next town hall. But other than that, I think uh, a 2.5 hour meeting is pretty good, unless anyone has any other pressing questions that they'd like to ask. No? All right. Thank you everyone who inputted their like information and inputted stuff. Thank you, Jacob, for like a lot more of the backstory. I really appreciate like someone who has more of the professorial knowledge of magic to give us some context on some things and support like the ideas that we're just vibing on. Like, no, there's actual names for this shit. Uh, so I appreciate you interjecting. And again, guys, keep testing stuff, keep a positive attitude, and keep playing. And yeah, thanks everyone.
Cheers.
Give it up.
Good session. Good
Thanks
night,
for joining, BadDog.